Hmm? Ah!
Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/GOM. There's over 180,000 titles to choose from for any device you want to use to listen.
I murdered my brother.
We murdered him. Shared a rape with me.
Wasn't your brother.
This war has just begun. It will last for years. Thousands will die at your command. You will betray the man serving you. You will betray your family. You will betray everything you once held dear. And it will all be worth it. Because you are the son of fire. You are the warrior of light. You will sweep aside this pretender and that one. You will be king.
You promise these things, but you don't know. None of us know.
Let me show you.
Seven blessings, spearwives and sellswords, and welcome to our podcast. I'm Lord Sterling, Sir Duncan the Fearsome.
And I'm Kristen of McWigglebergino, descendant of House Wegman, ruler of Time Out, queen of nighttime streaming.
And joining us today is a special guest.
King Jason of House Kabazi.
First of his name.
The godfather of Podcastica.
The Czar of Zeds.
Ruler of Patreon.
The ketogenic.
And protector of the realm.
Welcome back, Jason.
Thank you. I'm happy to be back. It took me too long.
Yeah, it happens, you know. At least you're here now. We can all relax.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me back on. It was fun to have an excuse to binge because I hadn't been keeping up with you guys, but I'm all caught up now.
Oh, all right. Killer.
I'm stoked, yeah.
Yeah. So this is Game of Microphones, episode 62.
On this episode of our series Rewatch, we're covering Game of Thrones Season 2, Episode 10, Valar Morghulis.
And in case you're not already aware, this is a spoiler-filled podcast from the perspective of someone who's seen Game of Thrones up until Season 7, Episode 7. So, enter at your own risk.
I've seen Season 8.
Oh, shit.
It's all right.
Any good? Yeah.
It's all right.
It was overrated. Didn't live up to the hype.
Go watch Big Little Lies instead.
Warning. Spoiler alert. Spoiler alert. So let's jump right into it. How
I gotta
about
see that.
Kabasi starts it today?
Oh, we're doing our top 3 already? Okay, cool. I thought this episode had a lot of creepy shit in it, which I love. In
Yes.
fact, I was binging and I got to Blackwater, and it had like Daenerys going towards the House of Undying, and I'm like, oh, yeah, I get to talk about the whole House of Undying because that was probably still one of my favorite sequences in all of Game of Thrones.
Nice.
And I remember when we got to this part when I was watching it as it was airing, I was like, oh, I like this show even more. Like it went up a notch in my estimation.
Yes.
And it's because, for one thing, I really like when people, like a group of people, go into an unknown area and they're kind of they don't really know what they're up against. Kind of like in Star Wars when they all went to the Death Star, or
when Luke goes into the cave, kind of.
Yeah, I mean, but more like when you're going into somebody else's. Yeah, I guess that counts. Any horror movie, or like Stranger Things when they're going into the Upside Down. This feels kind of like that. Like you don't know what to expect. And this one was particularly unsettling because weird things are going on. There's no guards, and he says, Jorah says it's because of sorcery. And then when Dany's walking around the perimeter and Jorah's trying to keep up, it reminded me of when Nico runs ahead and goes around a corner and I'm afraid I'm going to chase after him and he's going to be gone. And she was gone, and he comes back around and the Dothraki dude is there.
I love the camera trick kind of things that they were doing there, where the music is sort of getting a little tense and she's getting further and further away, and you can see her getting closer and closer to the plane of the horizon around the corner of the building. This whole scene, the way that they shot it, sort of reminded me of Battlestar Galactica. I don't know if you've seen that, but the cathedral scenes, I'll say, where they're sort of like in an illusion and they're exploring through this unknown territory, and it's wild.
I have seen that and I love it, and that's another example. There's a lot of scenes in Battlestar where they're going into one of those big base stars or something. But illusion too. There's a lot of illusion in this episode, and this whole sequence is about illusion, not just the warlocks who seem to have a lot of power, but when it comes right down to it, all it takes is a little Dracarys to defeat them.
Yes.
But also what's the guy's name? Zaro? Is that his name?
Zaro Zoandoxis. Yeah.
Yeah. He's an illusion too. I mean, he's kind of powerful, but he's not as rich as he said. There's nothing in his vault.
Yeah.
And so
that's the old banker tactic. He's got the game there. It's a strong technique. It works.
Yeah. And when she says, "Thank you for teaching me this lesson," I love that, because she really does appreciate the lesson that she learned, even though she's about to kill the dude.
How would you articulate that lesson?
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. I mean, could it be don't trust anybody, or more likely something about how illusion and projecting power,
confidence is key type thing? Yeah. Fake it till you make it.
What did you guys think?
I think that I think what you're saying is true, but I also think that maybe the lesson is that there's only one person that she needs to have faith in and rely on, and that's herself. If she were to rely on somebody else,
and that's been a struggle.
People are going to let you down. Yeah, Drogo let her down. The Mary Maz-Dor. Wow, I lost her name for a second. Let her down.
Yeah. But what about Jorah? I mean, he's saying you can't do this without help. And I don't think this lesson taught her to have less faith in him necessarily.
No, I think there's a difference between seeking out third-party help and then trusting like a trusted advisor. She was trying to get money and ships from the Spice King, and then she was thinking about marrying Zaro, and now she's really come into her own. I think you nailed it, Kristen.
Yeah, she wants to be able to know that she can build it. She didn't rely on somebody to build it for her. It wasn't something, like when you look at Daenerys, I think like overall, it's people believe in her. In season 7, Missandei says it to Jon Snow and Davos. She says, if we wanted to leave, we could go. Yeah, and she'll give us her best ship, and she'll wish us good fortune. Like, we're here because we want to be here, because we believe in her.
It's like, you really believe that,
and she's built that.
Yeah, that's the good thing about her. And we're going to get to this later, I'm sure, but I want to bring it up now because it feels relevant to what we're talking about. That Tyrion, he gets the shit end of the stick all the time, and no one appreciates him. And he was just like the biggest hero ever in the show so far, and he gets like this insulting coin and trying to kill him and everything. And I was just thinking, the only time where finally in the show he is appreciated is when he meets up with Daenerys, like you guys are saying. I mean, she values him and his contribution, and that makes him, well, at least that's part of what makes him really want to be with her and fight for her and everything like that.
I have an interesting theory about that too. We saw him, he doesn't get credit in this episode, And like you were saying, he eventually does get the spotlight and the recognition he deserves when he goes into service for Daenerys. So I'm wondering if maybe he'll get a second chance to earn the respect of the people of King's Landing by saving them from Cersei when she tries to explode something else or something like that. If maybe King's Landing will finally get a chance to appreciate the imp for who he is.
Yeah, man. If I had to pick any one person I want to make sure has a happy ending in this whole thing, I think it's him.
I know, right?
Right?
Yeah.
Because they're not all going to. It's
especially like after the look on his face in this episode a couple times, just like the Dinklage nails that whole like
it.
innocent like victim of injustice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
God damn it.
Yeah.
Well, but back to this scene when she walks out into the ruined room with no ceiling, and it's the snow softly falling, and it had been sunny when they came in. I'm like, whoa, man, this is so trippy. Trippy is a good word. I just love trippy stuff. Watch Legion if you want to see something trippy. Ooh. It's one of my favorite shows. But it's like, is this in her head? And then it plays on her emotions. She sees Khal Drogo, and he's got what looks like their child, who also looks just like my child, by the way.
I totally had that thought. Yes.
Yeah.
Even with all the hair.
That's so funny, man. I gotta go back and look now.
Yeah.
He looks. You're a dad, so you have those bumbo seats?
I think so. What is that?
It's like the plastic seat that you stick a kid that can't sit up. So on those bumbo seats, there's a kid that has that full head of hair, and it's like shaped into like it's another kid that looks exactly like in that line of Bodhi
cut
and
from the same
Rhaego.
cloth.
Yeah, it's so funny.
It's classic.
So that whole thing, it was beautiful and touching, and to me it felt like kind of a way for her to get closure around that, because she really put her heart into that interaction, and it made me think, wow, we don't know for sure if there's not some truth to that. Maybe they contacted his spirit somehow, but probably not. I mean, it's all a ruse, but it did make me wonder what would have happened if she would have stayed there. Would that have just been a way for her to be placated in this blissful eternal existence with Khal Drogo while they like siphoned off of her magic or something? What was their end game with that?
So how I took it is that it was a series of tests, and she
Yes.
would have failed the tests. Her first test
Power.
was getting in.
Oh,
Her
getting
second,
in, right.
Getting into to the house. Her second test was resisting the Iron Throne when she heard the dragons.
The temptation
Her
of
third
power.
test, right. Her third test was turning around and leaving her husband and son when she heard the dragons.
The temptation of fantasy.
There's this quote from the first book that I really adhere to Daenerys in her entire story since Drogo died. And if you've read the books, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. It's, if I turn back, I am lost. And she repeats it almost like a mantra at the end of the first book. And that book, and that is, I think, kind of what fuels her for her entire journey. She is never looking back. She is always looking forward. And I think that this is, when she's in the House of Undying, I believe that she is telling herself, if I turn back, I am lost, like the entire time. And it gets her ultimately to her dragon. So that's her impetus in a nutshell for the entire series. She's going to go back to Westeros and conquer it. And being with Khal Drogo early on is going to help her do that. In this case, it would divert her from it. So I think you're totally right.
Definitely.
So then when she goes back, and I just loved the way that Warlock looks is perfect for this, because he's a creepy looking guy. And suddenly there's several of them. We already saw that a little bit before, but I remember when I watched this, it was spine tingling, and I couldn't take my eyes off of it. And I thought, man, you don't know what he could do next. And suddenly she raises her hands up, and she's in shackles, and they're talking about, you're going to be here for 1,000 seasons. And I'm like, dude.
Yeah.
And then she just goes Dracarys and they're dead. Which is a preview, and they're playing her music, da, 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 da. And then it reminded me of her being on one of their backs later in Marine, Dracarys, and
yes, beer,
other ships. And then later at the loot train battle,
Krasny's Monastis when she kills the slaver.
Yeah.
That's arguably her best badass scene ever.
A dragon is not a slave, Dracarys.
I watched that today.
Nice.
So before I leave this scene, she thanks Zara for teaching her the lesson. Then she locks him in his empty chamber vault with her handmaiden / prostitute. What's her name?
Doria.
Doria, yeah.
I thinking back on that, I had remembered that Doria had committed much more of treachery, but really all she did was she thought, oh well, I don't have anywhere else to turn to. It just didn't seem like she was instrumental in this whole thing and just kind of tried to make the best of a bad situation. I mean, I'm not saying I agree with her, but I don't know if she deserved to be locked up into a vault where she will probably starve to death. What do you guys think?
Woof. I mean, that's it's a hard fate to say anybody really deserves. So I don't know. What do you have to say, Kristen?
I think she was directly responsible for the kidnapping of the dragons and the killing of what's her name and all of the Dothraki that were there.
Okay.
I mean, Danny told her, hey, you need to go to Zaro and, go make him happy, and then I think that there was the comment about the fact that the dragons liked Doria and they trusted her. And so I think that she had a way to grab the dragons without it being a big deal for the dragons. And then she allowed Zaro's men to come in and kill all the Dothraki and steal the dragons.
Eerie.
And I think if she didn't betray Danny,
all that. Okay.
So do you think that
case,
do you think the punishment fits the crime? Do you think justice should be more swift, or do you think that that method of execution is just in this case? I mean, who knows? Maybe suffocating like that, losing oxygen. Maybe you just drift off and don't even notice it.
I think that it's too harsh personally, and that they should have just killed them. But it was dramatically satisfying for them to lock him in his vault that he was bragging about.
Yeah, and the way your mind goes off to imagine it is really intense too. I'm sitting here thinking about people suffocating.
What they're gonna do? Will one of them eat the other one or something?
They wouldn't have time for that. They'd run out of oxygen before it came to that. I think
maybe there might be some crafts.
That's hilarious, though. It's Zara would eat her for sure.
Yeah, you're probably right. Although he'd be a much bigger meal. So another creepy thing. I'm cheating here, but I promise I only have two more. So the other one is Jaqen H'ghar. Arya sees him up on this rock outcropping high above, and then out of view, and all of a sudden he's right next to her. And this guy always, back then especially, what is up with this guy? The way the actor plays it is so enticing.
Yeah, they couldn't have picked a better person. And the way that he sneaks up on her too, he sort of just appears in the way that it happens. She should have seen him because she walks right past where he is, and then he sort of steps out behind her, and it's she should have seen him. So he was doing something.
She wasn't
something
surprised
there,
to see him.
No,
not at all.
She knows he's a creepy dude.
He has a great line too, and she asks how did you know we were coming this way? And she's like, after all you've seen, that's your question.
That's your question. And even when he changes into the other guy, which I think is the creepiest moment, I'm immediately like, you're not a good actor. Get the other guy back in here.
Yeah, right.
But I also think that when he shows up later in season 5 or whatever it was, that I wondered if they might have actually picked a different actor to play him, just in keeping with the whole faceless man thing, but that they thought, no, this guy's too good and he has good chemistry with Maisie Williams, so let's get him back.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I
bet that's the case. Yeah, definitely.
Maybe. So there's that, and then the changing of the face, and also this is the first time I think that we hear the phrase Valar Morghulis, which comes back a lot, and the coin and everything, which just makes you think of all the things to come. And I wanted to ask you guys, I can't remember. So she says, I can't go with you right now to learn the ways of the assassin because I need to go find my family. I don't remember what changed her mind. Was it just that she thought her sister was dead or something later on?
She
finally decides to go.
She showed up to River Run. No, she showed up to House Frey with the Hound right as the Red Wedding was concluding, and she saw her brother's body come out with Grey Wind sewed to his
his
neck.
head sewed on.
Yeah. And I think the Boltons had.
I'm gonna.
Yeah, the Boltons had. Boltons had Winterfell, and her mom and brother were dead. She thought that probably Bran and Rickon were dead, and she didn't want to see Sansa. She even didn't like saying that she wanted to check on Sansa.
Yeah, she did step
scene.
up and do it, though. I give her credit for that, for saying, stepping up and saying, and my sister, I need to find her too.
I loved it that she closed her eyes at the end of it. She's like, ugh, I can't believe I said that.
Yeah. Oh, man, there's something that this scene made me think of. It was the second time we've heard Jaqen refer to the god of death as the Red God.
And the Faceless Men in the same sentence.
Right.
I wrote down the same thing.
So that made me think more about like the Lord of Light and the Faceless Men and the Red God and the God of Death. And it seems like the God of the Faceless Men, the many-faced God, the God of Death, the Red God, and the Lord of Light, who is also the Red God, seems like they're the only ones that like have tangible evidence of their existence and power, right? You see the Faceless Men have these shape-shifting abilities, and the Lord of Light has given Melisandre the ability to see into the future through the flames and everything like that. So I've made the connection watching it this time that we have two main characters from the Stark family who are like irreversibly altered by the Red God or the Lord of Light. We have Arya, who ends up being able to shapeshift essentially, and then we have Jon, who's resurrected, both at the hands of directly given these capabilities by the Red God, it seems. So it's going to be interesting finding out what the connection is, how it all plays out. Just thought
you could make an argument that the gods would, and that the old gods have tangible powers as well, as it's the children of the forest that made the White Walkers, and it's the children of the forest that saved the remaining weirwoods that turned into Godswoods.
And now that we've seen Bran
has
his whole fourth dimensional stuff.
I think there's also a theory that the Red God is, according to the practitioners of the Faceless Men, the Red God is one facet of the God, the many-faced God. He's one of the faces. So that
I guess you could just say any god, but he keeps coming back to the Red God.
Yeah. Maybe one of the writers had a brain fart.
Then there's Quaithe.
Oh yeah, then there's Quaithe too. Right.
Quaithe is a red priestess, but she uses a girl and a man in her vernacular. And
we don't really get to see too much of her powers on the show, but we do see her knowing that Jorah approaches without having to look or anything like that.
Right.
Knowing information.
So, yeah.
One little note is, when Jaqen H'ghar changes his face, I love that he says Jaqen is dead.
Yeah. And then he says all men must die, because he says Valar Morghulis. Say it.
And it makes me think, man, we may never have seen this particular guy's face. And this particular guy may not even be the same guy that she meets later on. Yeah. I mean,
she could just get word, like they could have got word. Oh, we used this face. Yeah. We talked about this type of stuff. Use that face.
She knows this guy. And we know, at least for Arya, there is a real person under there who has a real face. But if it works that way for everyone else, we still don't know. Maybe that ugly, creepy dude was. Could be. And then let's see, what else was I going to say about that? Oh yeah, the voice. So when he changes face, he still has
the same voice.
Tom Washika or whatever his name is, his voice. And I think that was just to make it clear to us that it's the same guy. But later, when we see Arya do this trick and everybody else, their voice changes. Like when she becomes Walder Frey, it would be really stupid and weird if she still had Arya's voice.
Right. And when the waif becomes the Terminator and chases Arya down the streets of Bravos.
The T-1000.
yeah. Oh, yeah. T-1000. Wrong Terminator.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. I was just going along with the joke. Go ahead, please.
Third and final creepy shit was the last thing with Sam and the whites and the White Walkers, and just seeing that one White Walker stare him straight in the face.
Yeah,
and
which we need to talk about.
When this first happened, it's like, oh my God, it's breathtaking. I don't think we'd seen massive whites like this in the series before, and I just couldn't believe it. So
why didn't they kill him?
That. Yeah, that's my question. Why didn't they kill him? They're like, not worth it, pudgy little guy.
I don't know.
It's going to be their
they let the guy in the prologue of book 1, the first guy who Ned Stark beheads, they let him go for some reason too. So it's not unprecedented that the White Walkers will let you go on occasion. So
yeah, I mean, maybe, I imagine, because I'm also like, where are they going? I mean, they're just going to walk around for a few years. It looks like it's supposed to be ominous, but
they were heading to the Fist this time. I figured it out. Finally, I figured it out.
But we know they want, their ultimate goal, or not ultimate goal, but their goal right now is to build up a huge army. And so maybe they just didn't think Sam was worthy of being in the army.
It could be the connection with the Night King and the supposed connection of the Three-Eyed Raven and so on and so forth. Only because, somebody needs to be able to say that it's real, right? And maybe maybe they see that Sam is that
trustworthy,
because Sam eventually becomes, kind of the one who's documenting all of this, and he probably will come out of the end of this as the one that documents this.
Why would they want everyone to know?
I have no idea. None. I'm just shooting out theories here.
I want to understand them more, but I also think that it's probably better for the story if that they remain pretty mysterious.
And it's kind of, it sucks though, because George R.R. Martin is like, he's known for breaking tropes, and like changing the way that you expect the story to play out, and he doesn't have black and white characters, but the whites and the White Walkers are pretty black and white.
They're a force of nature,
super evil.
Yeah. And they were created by the Children of the Forest, right, to help defeat the
now we do know
men.
a little bit. Yeah.
So it's more like, they're just a weapon that got out of control, it seems like.
Replicating nanobots programmed to weed out.
I mean, they're like the Terminator.
Skynet.
Yeah, there you go.
I'm done.
All right. So
that was great.
Yeah, good one.
I like it. I like it that it started off creepy. That was just your theme.
Yeah.
I like the creepiness.
Well, because we were talking earlier, and I'm like, it's hard to find themes for me in Game of Thrones. It's easier in Walking Dead because Scott Gimple's mind kind of works that way. But then I was like, kept thinking, that's creepy. Hey, that's creepy.
I found a couple themes in this episode too, actually.
Oh, good.
I guess since I just said that, we'll go with mine next, which is my number 3 is regret, the leader's burden and consequences of actions. And so basically that's just like the way that Stannis and Theon are reacting to how they've chosen to lead, essentially. Stannis, it starts off in the scene as he's standing there with Melisandre talking, and he is pissed. He's mad that she told him that she saw this victory in the flames, and she claims she still sees it, and he's doubting the Red God at this point and saying the flames lied, and he's saying, I'm no better than a savage for trusting in a fire god, which I thought was like kind of a funny line. And he's like lamenting about how all this seems to be bullshit. How he lost all these people and everything for what? And then he sort of breaks down and has a moment of realization when he realizes that he's murdered his brother. And he's like, I murdered my brother.
It's like he just came off of PCP or something and like,
what
did I do?
Yeah.
Well, did you notice that he is, and in this scene, in more anguish and turmoil and self-doubt than when his own daughter is burned at the stake.
Fucker.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
he's just like, dude, you lost a battle. Like,
Right.
chill the fuck out.
Yeah.
And in this scene,
calm down.
He says, I murdered
back
my
up on the
brother.
horse.
Yeah. He says, I murdered my brother, and my notes next will be your daughter. You should have seen this
Right.
coming. They burned Axel Florent at the stake too, and that was Salice's brother, his wife's brother. So they're like well accustomed to burning their family members, essentially murdering their family. They're both kinslayers. It's really fucked up. So I just thought it was interesting that he's reacting to this. He's questioning everything. He's not taking it very well. And it's interesting that you brought up that it's like he's coming off of PCP too, because I was questioning while watching this if Melisandre was drugging him, manipulating him. Remember how she has that scene with Salice where Salice walks in and Melisandre's naked, and she's talking about manipulating Stannis and how Salice knows they had sex and everything, and she's talking about how she has all these like dusts and potions and tricks for manipulating people, and she relies on them less now because the dragons are back and she's more powerful magically. But
that's interesting because that's the same thing the Warlock said, that was the whole reason
right,
why they
in this
wanted
episode
Dany there, because the dragons make them more powerful, and she makes the dragons more powerful.
Yeah, it's great.
So they bring the magic.
Yeah, so there's a scene in this right here where she comes up to him after he's expressing these doubts, and she's asking him, she's telling him to like share the weight of the burden with him, and he's telling her, it wasn't your brother, and they go on to say that the war has just begun, and she goes into this monologue where she's telling him everything that's going to happen. The war has just begun. It will last for thousands of years, or last for years. Thousands will die at your command. You'll betray the men serving you. You'll betray your family. You'll betray everything you once held dear. And it will all be worth it because you are the son of fire. You are the warrior of light. You will sweep aside this pretender and that one. You will be king. And she's doing all this. And while she's doing it, she sort of like has her hand around his head and she's like stroking his hair or something. And I was wondering if she was like maybe like sprinkling something, under his shoulder.
100%.
Even when they're looking, she's having him gaze into
look into the fire. That's when it's kicking in. I'm thinking
it feels like a bewitchment a little bit, right? And both of them, they look like they're on drugs, just in awe. And she's got this grin, and he's just like kind of mind blown. And you wonder what he's
back
seeing.
on the PCP.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. But then again, we see the Hound see something in the flames later on, so it may not be.
No, I mean it doesn't necessarily need to be a drug. It can just be a bewitchment, right? Looking into the flames seems to do that. And then there was another one too. Well, it's Varys, who we still don't know what was whispered to him, but it surely made an impact on his life because
we're going to have to find out
magic now. Yeah.
Now that they mentioned it, we're going to have to find out. It's like Chekhov's gun. We're going to have to see it fire.
If we don't, then I want my money back.
Yeah.
And one other thing she said is he said something about, you're telling me about wars, and she says, I've been fighting far longer than you.
Right. And hint number one.
Yeah, hint about her true form, an old woman.
Yeah, and since we're mentioning that too, I was when we were talking about the Faceless Men a few minutes ago, I was wondering if they might have any type of life extension capabilities. If they can shift form, and change shape and everything like that, you got to wonder whether or not they can combat age. Arya transformed into an old guy basically, and then turned back into Arya.
Yeah, just transform into a kid.
Yeah, so Melisandre, or whatever
years.
age you want to be, So Melisandre is like super old. We saw when she takes off the necklace and her glamour is removed. We see she's mega old. Maybe the Faceless Men, if they're both, under the power of the same god, maybe they're connected.
See The Shining?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
It reminded me of the woman that he meets.
In the bathtub.
Yeah.
Room 237.
One of the things. So Melisandre, I think there's a pretty damn good chance that she is trying to enchant Stannis and later Jon, but I also do believe that she believes Stannis is the one, and I think the Lord of Light is telling her that. And for
I would have
whatever
to
reason,
agree.
Yeah, so I think she thinks whatever she's doing, I think she thinks it's because it's the right thing, not because she's trying to. I think she's trying to help whatever the right thing is to happen.
She's trying to get these people, these pawns, as she sees it. She's trying to put them on their paths that they're supposed to be on.
Exactly.
Yeah, I agree. She feels like her cause is just and that she is, like she's doing what she's supposed to do.
Serving her God.
Do you think this is how she's like handling like Stannis's regret or her regret in a way? Like, she regrets. Do you think that she like regrets sending Stannis off, or maybe she regrets not insisting that she goes to Blackwater but to be by his side?
It's a good question. I don't know.
I think later doesn't she say I should be with you this time? I mean,
I think so. Yeah,
sort of. He's treat it like let's learn from that mistake.
Yeah, and he says like, I'm never leaving you behind again, or something.
Yeah. So I wouldn't be surprised if that's true. But I think that she's more like, look at the long game, like you were saying, Kristen. It's just one battle. I don't think she seems very shaken. She's just like, this is just a setback.
How about this scene, that little segment of this scene where he strangles her? How crazy was that? He's like saying that the Red God is bullshit, and she says she's been fighting longer than he has, like you said, Jason. And he says, have you? Show me how you fight. And he grabs her and starts strangling her. Where's your God now? How do you, how will he save you? How do you fight? And she just like dangles her arms and like, I'm like Gandhi or something, not
then resisting. She said something that sounded
inside you,
something typical that she would say. And he's just like, whatever, but he lets go.
And that's when he realized, had the moment about murdering his brother. He, almost killed her, and then probably triggered the thought in him that, oh my God, what did I do? Yeah, but I thought that was a really great scene between the two of them.
It was, yeah.
And I thought it was interesting too, because Stannis is dealing with the regret of the decisions that he's made, and he's taking it outwardly on Melisandre at the moment. He's strangling her, blaming the Red God, doing all this. And it sort of contrasts. It's like the yin to my yang, which is the second half of my point here, which brings us to Theon, who is doing his thing.
Punchable face.
Yeah, and he's and he's talking with Maester Luwin, right? And Luwin is telling him that he's like, I know that you're not the guy that you're pretending to be, and he's like, maybe you're right, but it's too late, basically, which is a really sad moment. Because it's like the opposite.
I've gone too far to pretend to be anything else.
Yeah, he sort of knows he fucked up, right? And I think that he's doing the sort of opposite of Stannis here. Instead of trying to take it out on other people, he's making a decision to move forward on his path and accept the consequences instead of fleeing and going to the wall or something and saving himself. He's sort of taking the responsibility personally and setting himself up for his own downfall, whereas Stannis is like outwardly projecting his anger and taking it out on other people. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, it was sort of noble for him to just decide to charge in knowing that it was a suicide mission, although you could also see it as just hard-headedness, but it's a good thing that the guy whacked him.
Yeah, that's so funny.
Watching this again, because the first time I'm like, Theon, he just feels like one of the brothers, even though he's from somewhere else. And then he turns on them all, and he acts. You mean
the Stark? He feels like a Stark.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then he turns on them all, and he acts, all like with bravado. And I'm like, oh, what a fucker. Watching it the second time, I feel more sympathetic to him because I can see that he wants his father's approval. But not only that, he's an Ironborn, and this is what they do. They go in and they take what they want, and they have to prove their strength by, if he had just done what his father said, then he wouldn't really be doing what the Ironborn do. And that's to step up to the plate and be a strong person and pillage and rape and plunder and take over. Right. So he's playing by the rules of this world that he's in, and family is more important. He was kidnapped by the Starks, and yes, he came to love them, but even so, even Caitlin Stark would say, look, I know you love Rob, I know you love Talissa, but you're honor bound to abide by your promise. In the same way, Theon is honor bound to be an Ironborn and act as an Ironborn. But when Lewin says you're not the man you're pretending to be, not yet, I feel like the only, Duncan, you said Theon fucked up. I feel like in some way you might see it as the only way he fucked up is that, he's just not a strong enough person to do this. He's too wrapped up in his ego and he's just not. He doesn't command the kind of respect that
he's not the Ironborn that he's pretending.
He's not
to be.
Effective, yeah. And the thing is, later on in the series, almost to where we are now, after he's been tortured and castrated, he's starting to feel more like a solid, grounded person. And right. He would probably say it wasn't worth it, but that's what it took to get him to be more of a strength of character,
Yeah, it's pretty funny.
That's what I think.
You mentioned Rob marrying Talissa, and I thought that was funny too. I'll just bring it up real quick because I thought it was a great parallel to. We had an interesting parallel between Rob and Joffrey in this episode, where Rob almost is even worse than Joffrey in one aspect, where he decides to turn his back on the oath that he took to marry Walder Frey's daughter, whereas even Joffrey is like, a king must keep his word. I'm already promised to another. So I just thought that was
that was
crazy.
Interesting about his character, because he's actually trying to adhere to some form of honor. Like, there is a boundary for him. It didn't take much to talk him out of it. But.
I was very surprised by that. What do you think, Kristen?
Well, actually, I thought that whole scene was all kind of set up beforehand, and it was just kind of played out like a play.
I was wondering about that too.
Only because, and the only clue that I really had, I watched that specific scene 3 times in the last 24 hours because I'm like, something's not right about this scene. And what it was is that Pycelle comes forward and he's already talked to this High Septon when this is supposed to be like Loras is asking, Joffrey, I want you to marry my sister. And everybody's like, gasp, clutch the pearls. And it's like, Pycelle's like, well, I've already talked to the High Septon. It's fine. It's like, okay, well, if everybody else is clutching their pearls and you seem to have already cleared the way, then this is all for show.
Right. I have down, I wonder what percentage of this scene is scripted.
I love that. I didn't consider that, but I think it's much better that, okay, I'm going to protest because that'll get everyone on my side.
That'll make me look kingly.
Yeah.
Right. Because you look
Rob
like a
didn't even do that, though.
Last night.
Right. Yeah. That was funny, too, because she's like, word of your courage and everything. I've heard tales of your, battle courage. And last episode, we saw him run from the battle. It's so funny.
A king can do what he likes.
And you can even tell that when she's saying that, she's laughing about it, too. I've heard the opposite.
Right.
You can tell.
But it's also the sexiest thing ever, because she says, and those tales are deep rooted within me. And she's batting her little eyelashes at him.
Classic.
Did you notice that her dress was flapping in the wind?
Yes,
and it was the only thing that was moving in the entire scene.
That's so funny that you wrote that down. I have that written down too. I have Marjorie's dress blows in the wind, but how? They're inside the throne room. Haha, TV aesthetics out of control. They love subtly using the wind effect on beautiful ladies, but in this case, it's actually a little too much. Surprised I never noticed it before. I must have picked up on it from watching Supergirl, because they're constantly doing it to Supergirl.
Did you think it was too heavy-handed to do that?
No, I've never noticed it before, but I think it was sort of I wouldn't say it was too heavy-handed, but I would say it's an error. Like a film error, it broke the scene for me and made it unrealistic once I saw it.
I thought it made her look like an angel, which is what they were trying to do,
Right,
This is our crown jewel of the Tyrells. Here you go, you psychopath.
Yeah, I agree totally. I think if it was just a little more subtle, I think that they just had the fan on slightly too high, and that's what broke that moment.
Yeah,
for
maybe. I can get with that.
Just a little bit too drastic of a difference from everything around it, which wasn't moving at all.
And her breast her cleavage is straining against that dress, and it's just ridiculous.
Great. She's awesome.
So is that your number 3?
It
Duncan?
is, yeah. How about yours, Lady K?
Man. Well, I guess if we're gonna go with themes, I'll just do mine. So mine was just kind of like, at the end of every season, you always have like kind of a shift, and it's usually is something to propel the story forward. Like you see, especially with this show, you see people just kind of like, okay, this is my next journey, right? But in this episode, to me, the shift wasn't like, okay, I'm gonna, go this way now. It was like there was a change in mindset in most of the players. Like everybody has now shifted how they're playing the game, if that makes any sense. Like, so one of the biggest ones that I saw was Baelish and Varys. Ooh. And I put that they both kind of changed up their strategy. So with Baelish, let me go back to it. So with Baelish, this is the first time we see him put like his first few claws in Sansa. Like right as Joffrey has finished accepting the Tyrell's proposal for Marjorie, you see Baelish walking with purpose across the throne room towards Sansa's direction. And the very next scene is him interrupting Sansa celebrating. And then he's like, he goes... I mean, you've heard me talk about the two voices of Baelish and Littlefinger. So when he's in front of Joffrey, he's like, all I need are, sons and grandsons. And he has his royal Baelish voice, right?
Grandsons then.
And he turns around and looks at Sansa and he's like, I loved your mother very much. And all I want to do is bring you home, And you're like, motherfucker, you're doing it. You're starting it, right? And you actually see like his hands are like kind of clawing at her arm a little bit. So it's like he started, okay, so now that I have this piece of power, I have Harrenhal now, and I have the trust of the king, and I've brought these two things together. Now I'm going to go work on the north. And like he just like shifts his mindset over. Wow. And then Varys is watching this all play out in the throne room. I watched him during that, when I told you something's not right about this. I watched every character during that scene.
And he is not stoked.
He is pissed.
Yeah.
He is like rolling his eyes. He's looking around like, are you guys really soaking this up? Like he cannot believe what's happening.
He's furious.
And the next time we see Varys, he goes to the brothel and he's completely hidden to the point that Roz like disrobes for him. And he's like, hey, how would you like to work for me?
Little does he know that he gets her killed, basically. So sadly.
Yeah.
But she was going to get killed no matter what. I mean, Littlefinger was throwing her to Joffrey, and she played it way too loose and free, and she didn't play it smart. But he tells her, you should be afraid of him. He's a dangerous man. And what's funny is that he goes, I know what his weakness is, right? And he doesn't know that I know. He doesn't know that I know that he knows his weakness. And of course it's, his desire for power and for the Iron Throne, right? So Varys is now going to act defensively, and he's shifting his focus to protecting, what I think is the realm.
And an offensive tactic against Varys to some extent, or against Littlefinger to some extent.
Yes, absolutely. I think it's all the two of them play out some side drama for most of the series, which is very enjoyable.
Yeah.
But they both have a shift in focus during this time.
They're sort of yin and yang to each other as well. And I think at this point, it sort of illustrates that well when he points out to Roz that Littlefinger doesn't care about the people that he employs. When he says that I care about and I protect the people who work for me, he's right. Littlefinger doesn't give a shit about his minions. All Roz has to do to verify that is think about the story that Baelish told her a few weeks ago about the girl who was a bad investment for him.
Oh.
The interesting thing is they're both sort of yin. I mean, they're both sneaky and they're not warriors. But apparently, at least from what we've seen so far, it seems as though, and I believe it, that Varys is pure of heart and he's a good guy, but he's still sneaky.
I think so too.
Yeah, but I agree with Duncan. I think it's sad for poor Roz because it turns out as soon as she finds out that he doesn't have a penis, her whole demeanor changes. She seems almost annoyed with him because I think it's I don't have any power over this guy, but B,
plus she's scared of Littlefinger.
What does he want then? Like he's here to ask me to do something, and then she goes and when she finds out that Littlefinger wants to marry Sansa, she tells Varys, and he convinces Olenna Tyrell to arrange a marriage between Sansa and Loras. And then when Littlefinger finds that Roz betrayed him, he gives her to Joffrey, and then it's crossbow time. So that ended up
right. Yeah, it's messed up.
Could be on a T-shirt somewhere.
Yeah, it's crossbow time. So
I mean, that scene killed me because look, okay. Who's your sexiest character? I mean, Marjorie's up there for me, but I think Roz.
I like
Jon
Dany.
Snow.
Roz
Kit
is
Harington.
number one.
Oh,
Yeah,
Roz.
yeah.
Roz is number one for you.
I think Jon Snow's probably my third.
Yeah.
What about you, Duncan?
Oh, Daenerys. No doubt. But yeah, the when Varys is talking about this to her and telling her that Littlefinger doesn't protect his people, that sort of enforces the point that you guys are making, that he's sort of different than Littlefinger. It's like they both use deception, right? But within that sphere, they're like yin and yang, both shadowy figures, but of opposite moral content.
Yeah.
One using deception for his own benefit, the other using deception supposedly for the benefit of the realm. So this scene seems to reinforce the fact that Varys is good, but whether or not we, believe that depends on how trusting we are and how we interpret the evidence that's yet to come. And I don't think we know everything yet, so I can't wait to find out what the truth is about Varys.
I mean, in any other show, I'd be saying, come on, Duncan, he's good. But in this show, I mean, the only thing is I feel like some of the bite has gone out of Game of Thrones in the last couple of seasons, and maybe it's more traditional now. But this show, I mean, I felt like Lucy or like Charlie Brown running up to kick that football so many times, and it pulls it out with Oberyn and
big time.
What else? The Red Wedding, and even Ned. I'm afraid to trust in anything, but now it does feel more like a traditional, like, let's have the good guys win kind of show. So I am thinking that Varys is a good person, but I guess I'm saying I wouldn't be shocked if he turned out to have some nefarious ends in mind.
Right, totally.
He's mustache twirling.
Yeah, he is. Him and Baelish. Yeah, Baelish has an invisible mustache that's like, always twirling it. But I mean, I'm tending to lean with you guys, but that's what makes me nervous, is that I'm becoming complacently,
right.
That's
okay
with
See,
it.
I think he's just one of those characters where it's, look, some of them are going to be at face value. Varys has been true to his character the entire time. He hasn't deviated from his ultimate goal, in my opinion. But, I mean, this is Game of Thrones, and you never know what's going to happen. Absolutely. I mean, look, when Littlefinger died, that was the best moment of the series for me.
I'll say
I'm
that
not even kidding.
Tyrion's not going to turn around and turn out to be a bad guy. No way. If that happens, I'll be like, no, that you guys are wrong. The writers are wrong.
Yeah, like at that last episode.
Not a possibility.
When it looked like Tyrion was looking sketchy in the boat. We know he's not doing anything sketchy. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm just going to move on real quick.
All right.
So with the whole mindset of the shifting and everything, you see the Tyrells, and they've now abandoned, Renly, which they never should have gotten into bed with him in the first place. But good job, Loras.
Why not?
And because he had no claim to the throne at all, none.
In bed with him
because he's younger. He's the younger brother.
No, he was the younger brother.
Yeah.
He went against his own older brother. It just, all he did was create problems.
His only claim would be by conquest, and that the realm didn't need that.
But like Catelyn said earlier, my son is actually fighting a war and not playing at one. Like, he didn't do anything. He had a big army, and all they did was joust each other. Ha ha ha! Sorry.
Oh, is that a metaphor?
I couldn't help it.
Hanging out with Duncan too long. No, I'm just kidding.
I know. So anyway, the Tyrells have now shifted their game over to the Lannisters because they think that that's the winning side to, kind of hang their hat on, and they're going to use their crown jewel, Marjorie, to do it.
And Littlefinger helped with that.
I know. And then so then we have a lot of other like little shifts. You have Jon Snow. He's starting to infiltrate the wildlings, right? I mean, he had no idea that was what he was going to do.
Yeah, he just got a big mission update.
So that's his goal and his, as you said, his mission now. So his whole mindset has now changed, and he's probably reeling a little bit from that. The White Walkers are marching, and they've got their own kind of plan that's happening. And to this day, I don't know if we're ever going to really know why they passed up Sam. Melisandre manipulates Stannis with the flames, right? Because she needs to get this guy back on track with whatever is happening with him right now. Robb completely fucks his game up. Like, he just... he must have a brain tumor or something to go back on what he said he was going to do to marry this girl. And it's
did you think that when you first saw it?
When I first saw it,
when back
I read the
in
books
2000
first.
Whatever. I mean, the reason why I ask is because that feel like you said, Duncan, George R.R. Martin likes to turn the tropes on their ear. But that definitely feels like in any other story would be the right thing to do. Go against what everyone else says and fight for true love.
Yeah.
It feels like every other story, and that would be the right move. And it turns out to be the totally wrong move, and he should have listened to his mom. But you know what I mean? Like, when I first saw that, I was rooting for them.
Oh, absolutely. I think we all were.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I mean...
Because you're thinking with that little worm between your legs, Jason.
But because we know what happened to Ned in season 1, we know that this isn't necessarily going to be a happily ever after. I mean, the whole beheading of Ned Stark in the first season basically tells you, listen, don't fucking get attached. And then they seal the deal with the Red Wedding. But
so do you think Dany and Jon should not get attached to each other?
I think we're going to lose one of them, and it really kills me to say it.
I'm pretty sure we will too.
It kills
You're
me to
probably
say
right.
it.
Maybe not.
I don't know.
I'm Charlie
we
Brown,
lost a
but
dragon
maybe not.
last season, and that killed me. So, you just got to be prepared for... you know what? I'm prepared for the White Walkers to win. Honestly. Okay. let's
George,
just
he
watch
said
humanity
it's
get wiped out.
I would like to see them make that bittersweet somehow. It's like the White Walkers win, but they turned out to be pretty cool.
It's like the Night King releases his mask and it's Arya Stark and she's smiling. She's like, sets her list on fire and walks off into the distance.
Yeah, everyone's dead. I win.
And then you have Daenerys, who she's been on this whole journey to get a ship, right? And then you can see that she becomes what's the word that I'm looking for? A not conquester. That's the wrong word.
Conqueror?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh my God.
That's what you are.
She's like, well, she wants to know how to kill. She's like, teach me how to do that, right?
No, Daenerys.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So, that's
she
okay.
comes into her own, yeah.
Yeah, and so you see her like she's now
Powerful.
okay. She's now been the Unburnt twice, and she's got this great group of people, and now she's got like some gold and the means to get to the next level of what she's trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
So you
they
can
seemed
tell
a little aimless they were just struggling to survive.
Yeah,
before this.
totally. Yeah, totally. So finally you feel like, okay, she's got the train back on the tracks. Like, good. Now she's going to go off and do what she's going to do. Theon this whole time is having an identity crisis, and all he wants is to be a part of something and a part of a family. And for some reason, he wants to be, a part of his family, who keeps rejecting him, but whatever. So, he goes out and he's like, I'm going to die. Okay, here we go. We're going to die. We're all going to die, which was his fatal mistake. He expected these people who have never respected him, who have always made fun of him, who have never considered him to be one of them, to die for him. And, what happens is that he gets betrayed by them, and then they ultimately get betrayed by the Boltons, and everything goes to shit after that.
And then we have a season of torturing.
Oh God!
Gosh, I know.
Seriously.
I can't believe we have to watch that.
I know.
Bran and Rickon are sent to the wall. So they are off now. Okay, now we're in survival mode. So they've went from little lords to hiding out to now, okay, we're going to go try and find Jon and be at the wall and see what we can do from there, right? And get at least get some protection from these people.
Yeah.
So
totally different for them. They were just sitting
right.
at home comfortable.
Yeah, being crippled. So it's always fun to see when, everybody is just kind of shifting into the next season, but they're all shifting in a completely different way than you would probably expect them to, even at the beginning of the season. So I just found that really interesting, especially Baelish and Varys, because I love talking about them.
I feel like these last 2 episodes are, the people who have not yet watched Game of Thrones and are like, I don't like fantasy. And you're like, well, you should just give it a try. I feel like if people make it here, this is when they're going to be hooked. Or if they're not, then just give it up.
Totally.
Never give it up. Never give it up.
And if you're not hooked by this, it's not your thing.
Yeah, it's not gonna happen. And you're right, Jason. I forgot to mention Arya, but Arya is definitely setting out on some path. I think that she is now aimless, kind of. I mean, she thinks that she has a purpose, but she's also got Gendry and Hot Pie.
Yeah, and she's wanting to find her family, but so I feel like she's just got this spark of, look what this guy can do, and he offered me this chance to teach me. I'm not ready for it yet, but it's in her mind.
It's that stark honor that's keeping her.
In the context of the hero's journey, she just refused the call.
Oh, see? Lady Mormont would be disappointed. You refused the call.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. That's great. Refused the call.
I love her.
Her cute little accent. That's so funny.
I know.
That's great.
So that was my number 3.
Awesome.
How about your number 2, Jason?
I have another theme. It's love and marriage, mostly love. So love
Gross.
does not, as we've said, end
exist
well in Westeros. And I was trying to think of as many couples as I could. Tyrion and Shay, Robb and Talissa are in this one. But Ned and Catelyn did not end so well. Dany and Khal Drogo, Renly and Loras, Lyanna and Rhaegar, even Cersei and Jaime. I think they've kind of broken up. That it's kind of interesting. That's like the least dramatic of all of these, but
until he kills her.
Oh
yeah, right. To come possibly. We don't know anything, people, but it's probably gonna happen. So anybody else? Like, who are the big couples? I think that's. I don't know.
We've got Jon and Ygritte that are kind of forming right now.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
That's another
good
one. Yeah. And then we've got Jon and Dany, so we'll see how that goes.
We've
I think
got,
that could be the one that makes it.
Ares Oakhart and what's his face? That Dornish
Brown.
princess. That's
right.
Really
and Myrcella and her guy.
Oh, yeah.
Never works out. God.
Tristan.
Yeah,
Tristan.
Just seems like a junior high dude's name. So we've got Shay and Tyrion. Now, what sticks out in my mind when I think of Shay in the context of this whole series is how hardcore she betrayed him, and seeing her with Tywin and thinking, oh, I hate you for that. But looking back, it's totally clear that Shay loves Tyrion. That whole scene about you're mine and you're mine. And
aren't those the marriage vows also? I'm yours and you're mine.
I am yours and you are mine.
It's an echo.
Episode. Right, yeah, it's cool.
Yes.
So they sort of like are married, kind of.
I mean, they're in that mindset. Yeah. And then I looked back. Well, what happened? Well, what happened was that Tyrion decided that Shay was in too much danger because Cersei and Tywin found out. So he told her, you're just a whore, and made her go away. And that's what... She felt betrayed by him, so she betrayed him right back. Now, I'm not saying it's justified, but I had forgotten that, no, actually, she was totally with him at this point.
Yeah, and there's a great scene this episode where she says, fuck your money. And I felt so, happy for Tyrion.
She wants him to run away.
For one time, somebody seems to actually care about him and value him for who he is.
I wrote
fuck
that
what he
down
looks like,
too. Yeah,
fuck his wealth
because
and
she
what he
said
looks like.
you haven't been listening to me, or you haven't been listening very well, or
Right.
your
Right.
memory
I am
is
yours.
shit.
You're in my your memory
She should
is
be
shit.
thumping him on the head right there, like flicking him with her finger. Dude.
So
He's
funny.
just genuinely moved by that too. That was a
Yeah.
very sweet scene.
Yeah, that was some like that. If there's award-worthy performances, like damn.
The only bad thing about that scene is that anytime there's scenes like that, it ends with somebody dying and tragedy
Yeah.
on this show.
Speaking of
Yeah.
Shay, Jason, I have to ask you. We've had discussion recently about Shay in the context of her talking about cutting people's faces off, and then something else that was faceless man related. And I'm wondering if you have any thoughts on the possibility of Shay being either a faceless man or being versed in that type of stuff.
I mean, I don't think so. I think we can take her at face value, no pun intended. That, and also people wondered if Tywin hired her in the first place, and I don't think so. I think she's what she seems to be.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just wondering, I like exploring all the weird stuff.
Then we have Rob and Talissa or Talisa? Talissa?
It doesn't matter. George says
Okay.
pronounce shit however you want to.
I'll say Talissa. So I thought in the first place that it was kind of crazy for Rob to agree to marry a daughter of Walder Frey just so they could cross this bridge. But then I was thinking,
I know.
well, maybe that means they can cross the bridge anytime they want, and it is a pretty important bridge. Still a little crazy, but maybe not quite as crazy.
Maybe they could get a cut off those fees too, off those toll fees.
Yeah, but you can use my bridge, but my daughter's gonna marry the king in the north.
Right.
Like, that's bullshit. Here, have Edmure Tully. That would have been a better.
But then again,
bet.
if the bet works, it's not like they're just getting the bridge. They theoretically could have gotten Ned, which may have made it worth it for Rob.
I guess you're right.
I'm
just like,
if it's just
someone's
a bridge,
like,
of course.
can I borrow your car? And you're like, well, if you marry my sister. Or
Right. No, I'm
But
totally with you.
what if the car was going to get you to the cure for cancer? You know what I mean? Or something like that.
Right. And then it didn't work out, but
Yeah,
you promised.
yeah, exactly. A king should keep his word.
But Talissa's so cute, and they make such a great couple, and I was totally rooting for them, and then it totally fucking
I liked how
their faces.
her
and,
eyes are darting back and forth, from his eyes when they're like doing the vows back, the vow scene. Like she's acting it really well. And cute.
And like
little
you said,
scene
it was an echo of a scene that just came before where
with Joffrey.
Tyrion and Shay were just talking about belonging to each other.
Oh yeah, and it echoed the whole Joffrey setting aside Sansa thing. So now Rob has set aside Walder Frey's
Well, that's
daughter.
what my next thing, love and marriage. So we have Marjorie and Joffrey, and I had forgotten exactly how Marjorie ended up with Joffrey, so it was good to get a refresher that
Nice.
Joffrey tells Loras he'll grant him anything he wants in exchange for the Tyrells coming to his aid to beat Stannis, and Loras is glad to do that because Stannis orchestrated the killing of Renly, his lover. So he requests that the newly husbandless Marjorie, his sister, marry Joffrey and join their houses. And you could say that Stannis killing Renly or having Renly killed turned out to be just the thing that Marjorie needed because it granted her ultimate wish of becoming queen, but then it ultimately results in her death. So it's this show sort of has its ups and downs for people.
That's putting it lightly.
Yeah.
Littlefinger's manipulations end up failing long term.
Speaking of Marjorie's death, I think I've said this before on this podcast, but people dismiss Cersei as being unintelligent and ineffective, but I always think, well, most of her enemies are dead, or she's the queen. Like, as of now in the series, above anyone else, Cersei has won the Game of Thrones. I'm sure she'll be dead by the end of it, but right now she's the queen.
She's the queen. Well, see, she says she's the queen of the Seven Kingdoms, but Jaime does point out at the very beginning of season 7, you're the queen of 3 at best.
Yeah.
And the North is the size of all of them.
Who's done better, Rob Renly, Stannis, or Cersei.
Of the five in the War of Five Kings. Yeah.
Who's the other one? I forget. But anyways,
Dany.
Balon.
Oh no, Balon Greyjoy.
Yeah, or Balon. But so I mean, of those five,
yeah, she's the only survivor.
You can't say that she's ineffective.
She won the War of Five Kings.
Yeah, she did.
I think we can say that safely.
Yay! It's the first time I'm not like, go women.
So
I mean, she's you got to take other things into account just besides someone's gender.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Or race.
This is a perfect example of just because it's a woman doesn't mean it's best, okay? Let's just
not always. Anyway, and then just Littlefinger, like he's helping Sansa, and I was like, why is he helping her? And I went back to look at the plot, and he wants to marry her at this point, right, to shore up his political power.
Yeah, he wants to get her to Winterfell.
That's his shift. I think that's his shift.
Yeah.
He's like, okay, well, this is what I'm doing now.
He ends up, it's sort of ironic that he's promoting that, hey, I'm going to get you away from Joffrey because he'll still use you as a toy. And then he pawns her off on Ramsay, who is probably worse, at least as bad, but probably worse. And then later, of course, we get the most satisfying scene of all of Game of Thrones, as Kristen said.
I'm going to watch it tonight, right after we're done. She
sentences him to death. And her sister, the newly minted assassin, carries it out with his own
the
dagger.
Cat's paw, man. Yes.
Yes, that was great.
Going to what you were talking about, Jason, a minute ago about Robb and Talisa getting married, I put in a note that I was really confused at first. Because I'm like, why are they saying the words of the seven? He's from the north, she's from Essos. Like, what is happening here? And then I realized, and then I read like a little thing about how, they created a little backstory for that. But, if you take away that backstory that was created, it was an unaired backstory, right? But what I loved about it was that they got married in front of the Godswood, which was honoring Robb's father. And they said the words of the seven, which honors Robb's mother. So he took both of his parents' side and he kind of put them together in his marriage ceremony. And I thought that was really beautiful.
Yeah, that's cool. I like that. Good job noticing that. It's really good.
Yeah. It's kind of like what some people do today. Have a little bit of this, a little bit of that.
You can go with this, and you can go with that.
We're going to say our Christian vows and then jump over a broom, and it's going to be great. Smash a glass, l'chaim.
Yeah, sacrifice this, go. No,
we got it all. Did we check off all the boxes? Yes.
Okay, that's it for me.
All right. So what does that bring it to my number 2?
Yes.
My number 2 is the death of Obi-Wan Kenobi. Or the deaths of the mentors. In this case, that would be Maester Luwin and Corran Halfhand. So I just thought that was an important turning point for both characters of Bran and Jon Snow in this episode, where they're both thrust into the one of the most dangerous parts of their journeys into unknown territory, with following the death of someone who's served as a role model. To each of them. So first off,
Luwin tells Bran and Rickon and Hodor and Osha to go to the wall, but that's right when I guess Ramsay took over, got Winterfell back. So what if Bran had gone back? Wouldn't he just be the Lord then?
A good question. Ramsay may have taken him captive and tortured him or something.
I mean, well, at that point it was before the Red Wedding, so.
True.
I don't think they really turned against them until that happened.
Well, that's the question. When was it?
They probably saw that whoever had come had sacked Winterfell and burned it. So they were probably like, we just need to get out of here.
In flames, yeah.
That's a good point, though. That's a really good point. Strategically, since Robb hasn't been, usurped or, taken out of the equation yet, he's still the ruler of the North.
Yeah. I think it was the plan this whole time. So, maybe Bolton would have sent a raven saying, okay, just hang out for a little while and wait for the next phase.
Yeah, at this point they're in collusion, right? We think.
Yeah.
Because Tywin has already mentioned his alternative strategies, hasn't he? To Tyrion, I believe.
Yeah, and the Boltons have no honor and they're fuckers.
Yeah.
Right. And I love this. Like, we don't know that yet, right? We're just seeing Roose Bolton, and he looks just like a typical lieutenant, decent fellow.
Right. Yeah, we have nothing
carrying out orders.
At all.
Yeah, and he talks about, I'll send my bastard son over there to get it back, and you're like, go, dude, get it.
I know, we're rooting for him for one episode.
There's a great
hindsight.
Theory,
we feel dirty.
Yeah.
There's a great theory for the books where this isn't really like a spoiler, but I think it's just something fun that might get people sort of intrigued. Is people theorize that Roose Bolton is a vampire.
Oh my gosh, that's so weird.
Think about it. He always has this obsession with leeches and stuff. I don't know.
We see him in daylight. He's not a vampire.
Yeah, maybe not the traditional.
Next
vampire.
subject.
He eats garlic.
Oh well, okay. He's back on the table. I thought Lewin's death was really beautiful. I thought that they did a really good job with it.
So
I actually
up.
cried, and I've seen that 4 or 5 times now, and I still get tears in my eyes when Lewin dies because he's just such an honorable, kind man.
When I see things repeatedly, I almost get like more emotional about scenes like that. It's not like it hits me less. It's like it hits me more the second time going through.
Oh, that's interesting.
Interestingly, yeah. And subsequently, like every time, it's like it escalates. Yeah, that's
what
it's
scene
really
are you guys
hardcore.
talking about? I'm just kidding. That was a great scene too. And the actor was so good.
And how fucked up is that? It's like the most messed up. Like, this is probably the single most callous and cold and just like uncaring, like afterthought, insignificant murder we've seen on the entire show.
Because Dagmar Cleftjaw is the devil.
He doesn't even consider
that.
him as like a life form. He just like stabs him in the gut
I'll
and just like lets
kill that,
him,
like stepping on a bug or something.
It doesn't even acknowledge it.
That scene was almost comical. Like, oh, look, they just knocked out Theon right in the middle of a speech and then stab.
Yeah,
and whoa.
Lucy took the football away.
Yeah, it's so fucked up. Killed for no reason. And yeah, you're right. That whole speech is hilarious. Like, Theon, he has some good performances in this. Like, he's screaming about the guy blowing the horn the whole episode and cursing about it in that first conversation with Maester Lewin, and his voice is cracking because he's like screaming about it so much. And I think that Alfie Allen did like a great job getting into character for this. It really seemed very Theonish to me.
It's so such a contrast to how he is after he, Ramsay finishes with him.
God,
just so deflated.
Yeah, he's all ego until this point, and then he does not have an ego after that.
Right.
That's like the whole thing is Ramsay removes his sense of ego and identity. So yeah, you're totally right.
Do you agree? Like, eventually, there's this quiet strength that's starting to come up that probably maybe never would have.
Yeah, I think that it's like he started off as like his ego is overgrown, and Ramsay chopped it at the stem, essentially at the base, and now it's like grown back up to like a baby size, and it's like eventually it's gonna stay as like a size of a shrub.
Tail.
Yeah, basically.
But I mean, but he's more of a he seems more clear-eyed than he ever was before.
I'm sure he'd rather regrow something else other than his ego, but yeah.
I mean, I don't know if it's worth it. It's not worth it, but
no.
I do feel like he's got more integrity, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah,
now,
and he realizes,
Absolutely.
he finally realizes that he's not a scumbag Greyjoy. That he's a Greyjoy, but he, incorporates more of like the Stark characteristics into like his morality. So he's in this whole like era of his life. He's conflicted by wanting to follow his morality and then wanting to follow his father, and like the Starks represent like that moral aspect of the dichotomy of the Theon mind, whereas the Greyjoys represent like obviously the dark side of temptation and evil.
But even at his like most Greyjoy-ish, he was never like on level.
Right, that's because it contradicts like his
How
core
he was
is like I think the Stark like ideals embody his core.
But also he's been abandoned and he's such an outsider that he just lacks this certain confidence in himself.
Sure.
Well, what's interesting about Theon and his whole story is that if he had gone to the wall, like Lewin said, hey, run, go to the wall, go, Jon will be there, your sins will be forgiven, blah, blah, blah. If he had done that, he could have bypassed all of this because, when he saw Jon, the final scene between them before he went off to go save his sister, Jon looks at him, he's like, why do you have to choose? You don't have to choose. Be both. Be Stark. Be Greyjoy,
Right.
You're Theon.
Oh, yeah,
you know who
I
you
forgot
are.
about that.
And it's interesting to me because it's like if he had just gone up, Jon probably would have been the best person to counsel him in this identity
Absolutely.
crisis that he was having because Jon's whole life has been an identity crisis.
Especially
he
considering...
handles it with such honor and grace and truth.
Yeah, it's true. He's a whole another example of an identity crisis.
And he's got Targaryen in him, man, okay? He's got the cray-cray in him.
Yeah.
Or he may have just stabbed him like he was Maester Lewin.
Just like a dog in the street.
No, because Theon would have come clean. He would have been like, dude, Bran and Rickon alive,
that's the thing.
man.
As long as Bran and Rickon are okay, Jon would have
that should be the first
forgiven.
thing out of your mouth. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. And that's I think that decision that Theon makes to not to do that and potentially be absolved, I think is his penance. He makes the decision to like punish himself essentially and go forward on his current path, which is whereas Stannis is taking it out on Melisandre.
Did you notice that Maester Lewin suggested twice for Theon and then Bran and Rickon to go up to see Jon at the wall?
I did notice this episode.
I think that he holds him in very high regard, which says a lot about Jon, right?
Who doesn't hold Jon in high regard? I mean, everybody.
Well, I mean,
from the first episode
point in this story, right?
Yeah, I mean, right off the bat, Ned listens to him. The direwolves. There's 5 of them, 1 for each of your children. Like people respect Jon. We know that immediately. He's the one counseling Bran. Don't look away. Father will know.
Right, but I mean, Jon never picked up on that. I think he always just thought of himself as a bastard because he felt that hate from Catelyn so much.
Right,
and
even I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, that's okay.
Well, even Ygritte, she's just trying to figure out a way to sleep with him by taunting him into it.
I know
she Stark baby.
He kills Corn half-hand, and she's just like, "Yeah, okay, yeah, you and me in my tent
She's
later.
Like, stab me next, Johnny boy.
Let's do it."
Stab me next.
I know of a cave, but that probably goes in a Corrin.
The last thing with about the whole scene with Lewin is just it was just incredibly intense having Osha kill him quickly.
Right. Wow, what a moment.
The fucking poppy milk or whatever, just get it over with. But watching Hodor carry Bran around, I'm like, that's going to get a lot harder later on. I feel
I was thinking about that too. Actually, it's funny that he was dragging him with a cart at this point, pushing a cart, because the actor Christian Nairn, it turns out, has back problems, and he had been carrying Bran, but he started to having issues, so they brought in the cart to compensate for that, which contradicts the typical book image of Bran on Hodor's back.
Yeah, but what was cool was that when he came back to Winterfell, he was on a cart.
Yeah, it's true. He left and arrived on a similar style cart. So it's cool.
I feel bad we've gotten completely off track of your number 2.
No, because my number 2 enveloped all of the aspects of Lewin's death, so it's perfect. But yeah, I mean, I think we covered that pretty well at this point, right? So
did you want to talk about Corrin?
Corrin, yeah,
that's the next half. Yeah,
I felt like back then and now, really, he's gonna sacrifice his own life to just make it so that they believe John is, potentially a deserter. And
I think that now that you say that,
Corin
because I
knew
was
what
thinking the
was
same
coming.
thing. That he knew that what was coming, but he also may have just known he wasn't going to get out of it alive. That once the wildlings had him, he was toast. It's
that's quite a sacrifice for a possibility.
Yeah.
If he was going to die anyway, he could at least make John look good, so that maybe John could get out and get some intel.
Yeah.
But he told John.
But
too,
yeah, it's
he
extreme.
He said, "Make sure," because John said those men died for me, and he said, "Make sure it wasn't for nothing."
Right.
And I think that seeing that that Lord Commander Mormont had him as right hand and released him to Corin, saying, "Okay, this is your fast track now. This is how it's going to be. Now you go with him, be a ranger, and you've got to learn this, because when you're going to come back, you're probably going to lead." My guess is that the Rangers and Mormont and all these watchmen knew what was coming. The wildlings, or the White Walkers, the Whites, the Great War, the Long Night. They knew it. They needed a leader. It was him, and he needed a fast education.
Yeah, that fast track we talked about, and it also I don't know if you're current on our podcast, Jason, but we talked about tinfoil theory, where Corin had run into Benjen up in the north, and Benjen had already been in communication with the Three-Eyed Raven, who saved him from dying after he was almost killed by the White Walkers or whatever. So Benjen could have told Corin about what's going to happen, and Corin may have known for weeks or months that he was going to have to kill himself, just because he may have already been informed, you're going to meet Jon Snow, you got to do this and play your part. So that's the tinfoil theory with Corin's motivation.
Okay. I'm just going to forget about Corin now. He's done.
Sounds good.
Yep.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the other, he's the other, at least brief mentor for John, the mentor figure that dies, and then John's propelled into the hero's journey with no turning back at this point. He's got to play his part to survive, and it's just, interesting that there's two of them in one episode that sort of mirrored each other. I thought that was kind of a cool little theme, that this one particular part of the hero's journey is sort of examined in a couple different ways this episode. So that's pretty much sums up that, I think.
Number 2.
Yeah, I mean, Corin's death is badass too. What's his last line? "We are the watchers on the wall," right?
Oh, so awesome.
Yeah.
What if he had charged at John, and John was like, "I don't want to.
I don't want to do it now. Mama, no."
Corin is
And
great.
Corin
though.
should probably just kill John at that point.
I love it. He's like, "Is that all you got? Your traitor father, your whore mother."
He said whore mother, and John was like, "Fuck you." And that was
All
the
bugged
end
out.
of it.
Yeah.
That reminds me of when I was in college at UC Santa Barbara, and we always used to tell the most rank mom jokes to each other. 'Cause that's just what we did, right? And then my friend's brother came to visit for a weekend, and somebody said something about my friend's mom, like we always did. And his brother stood up, like, "What'd you say?" And my friend's like, it's okay, it's okay.
I love that. It's great.
Oh, I love it. When people aren't in on the joke.
Yeah, that reminds me of a funny story. I don't know if I've told it on the podcast before, but it's pretty funny. What's his face? Not Seth Rogen, but Jonah Hill, right? You know Jonah Hill? Remember he said
The other
Wall
fat
Street.
one.
Yeah. The other guy. He was at some nightclub in LA or whatever, and he goes into the bathroom and he sees his friend at the urinal, right? So he runs over and grabs his friend by the shoulders and shakes him and goes, it was like, "Earthquake!" And so the guy's pissing all over the place, And his friend turns around, and it's not his friend. He mistaked it for the wrong person, and it's Casey Affleck. And Casey Affleck's like, "Why'd you do that?" He's like, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I thought you were my friend." He's like, "Why would you do that to your friend?" Same type of thing with your mama jokes, right? Why would you say that to your friend? That's funny.
That's a good one. You got to try that.
Earthquake.
So glad I'm a girl. Okay, so I'm just gonna go into my number 2.
Sounds good.
So we touched on it earlier. I just wanted to kind of break it down just a little bit, but it was Melisandre's speech with Stannis. So, she says, this war has just begun. It will last for years. Thousands will die at your command. You will betray the man serving you. You will betray your family. You will betray everything you once held dear. And it will all be worth it because you are the son of fire. You're the warrior of the night. You will sweep aside this pretender and that, and you will sweep aside this pretender and that one, and you will be king. So what's interesting here is that, okay, the war has just begun. It'll last for years. We already know that she's talking about the long night, in my opinion. Stannis thinks it's about the war for the Iron Throne. The throne, right? Melisandre is like, nah, dude. It's the big one.
Even she doesn't know at this point, because she doesn't realize it until he gets the letter from the Night's Watch that Davos reads, and finally when he learns how to read, right? And then she realizes that the war isn't the war for the throne, it's the Great War, that you need to save the kingdoms to win the throne, and that's when Stannis super changes his outlook on the whole process. So yeah, totally.
Yeah, and maybe to a certain extent that she actually thinks that it is the Great War, because my guess is that her powers have intensified since the dragons have been born.
Yeah, and as far as they know, the war for the throne is the biggest scale war for the most powerful position in the kingdoms, and whoever's in the throne, that determines how the realm will be, if it's going to be good for people. Mm-hmm. So that is the Great War without knowing of the full war. That's
of what's going on.
Yeah.
So what's interesting is she starts to speak some truth here. She says, you will betray the man serving you. And that's obviously Davos.
Oh, she said man? I thought she said men.
I know. I redid it a few times because I'm like, I think she said man. Huh. And so I redid it. And she said man. And he does betray Davos. I mean, he strips him of hand of the king. He puts him in a cell. He has to earn his way back, and then he really ultimately betrays him, as you say, by burning his daughter. Which is interesting that Davos was more upset about it, but whatever. It says you. What?
She taught him to read.
Oh, right, exactly. Yeah. You will betray your family. Well, we all kind of know how that ended up. You will betray everything you once held dear, right? So
like his daughter.
His daughter, his wife, even the throne. Right. He's betrayed it all for the throne. He's betrayed the actual throne, in my opinion. He's betrayed the honor and the ability to get there by the steps he's taken to get there.
The throne would be sullied if he sat
mad. What's that?
Like the throne would be sullied if he sat there?
Yes. Yes, definitely.
It's like a politician that just is corrupt along the way to get, more power.
Just to get what he wants. Totally. The means to the end. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it says, and it will all be worth it. And at this point, I think when she says, and it'll all be worth it, now she's just kind of trying to get his ego up, right?
Yep. And that's also the Machiavellian brainwashing, the ends justify the means whole outlook, like you were saying.
Right. Because she's full of confidence that this is the man. Stannis the Manus.
The Manus.
And, she's stroking his hair and she's like, come look into the fire and really look in there. And, we know that, we know now. I'm not sure that we knew before on first glance, but we know now, I think it's pretty obvious she's kind of telling him a story and getting him to see in the flames what she wants him to see, because he's kind of ready to just give it all up. And if he gives it all up, that means she's wrong, and that probably will make the Lord of Light angry or whatever. But I liked what you said earlier, Duncan, about the fact that about how she may not have known that it was Stannis that wasn't the prince that was promised, but maybe it was fueling Stannis to get to the wall, to save Jon, so that she could be there to resurrect Jon ultimately, right? You never know. Yeah. And she says to Daenerys in season 7, she says, listen, prophecies are a funny thing. You don't trust the words. You just, you hear one thing, it could mean something different. She's grown, even in this small amount of time. For how old she is, she's still grown through this entire experience.
New tricks.
Which I think is great.
And I think
right?
it's clear
Yeah.
that she doesn't know. I mean, I think she does think that Stannis is the Manus. Because when, you know, it all goes to shit and she's up there trying to resurrect Jon, you can tell she's so deflated, you know? It's not
Yeah,
like she's
super
like, this
deflated.
is why I'm really here. It's like, God, I don't know. I hope this works.
And I mean,
and then
yeah.
when he comes back, then she's like, okay, maybe this is what it was supposed to be.
And I mean, she wasn't.
But then
like,
she was
wrong.
banished. Yeah. And she knew when to step out later, right?
Right.
Varys finds her on that cliff and is like, why aren't you down there? You know,
No,
she goes,
no.
no, this
Everybody
will
will kill me."
ruin everything.
Yeah.
They need to be together. I brought fire and ice together. I've done what I need to do. Now I'm going to go. Right. So you could tell she's had her own little arc here, which is wonderful. But at this point in the story, I think that there's two parts of her speech, and you will betray everything you once held dear. You can kind of draw a line right there, and that's about the halfway point. And the rest of what she says is stroking this guy's ego just to get him to do what she needs him to do next. So
I like his reaction to, you promise these things, but you don't know.
You know what? He's such a weasel. You know, he's so cool. I love Stannis. I love everything he did in Blackwater. I love how
He's trying to take the easy way out, though. In certain
here,
ways.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, absolutely. Yeah. But
he's not a coward, but he's not. He doesn't have honor at the same time. He's not a coward. Like,
I
he'll
can
risk
agree
himself.
with
that. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, he's brave.
So,
but yeah,
very brave. I mean, very brave. He was first off the boat, first up the ladder. Great.
Yeah.
But yeah. So that's my number 2. It's just kind of breaking down Melisandre's prophecy speech and.
Nice. Yeah, there was a very powerful moment with her. And
very much so. I
she
agree.
could be grinding something in her fingers to Stannis is breathing to, you know, manipulate him or something too. Like
pupils dilate.
Yeah, it was too weird. You just have to wonder about stuff like that, especially when she's known for doing that type of stuff, right? Mm-hmm. She's super slick. That's just a cool idea. It was cool.
Thanks. How about you, Jason, number 1?
Well, my number 1 was going to be Theon, but we've really covered that well. So I'll go into one of my notes that was a little bit longer, which is just the whole thing with Jaime and Brienne.
Nice.
I really liked that the first time we see Jaime and Brienne this episode, the first thing out of his mouth is, "You're a virgin, I take it."
He's such a douche.
Like, what a dick, dude. Yeah. And she's like, "Walk," and shoves him. And he's just needling her the whole time. And I just can't decide how much of that is him like strategically trying to progressively get under her skin, and how much is him just being bored and trying to have fun and amuse himself.
I think it's largely both. He's such a dick.
It's probably both, yeah.
And he's saying, I can't, that someone must have tried to get inside Big Brienne, right?
Yeah, they tried.
But you fought them off. She has a really funny moment, right, where none of them were strong enough. I'm strong enough. Not interested. Of course you are. You'd love to know what it feels like to be a woman.
When he says, maybe you wish that one of those guys would have been strong enough to overpower you, I feel like metaphorically, a lot of women want a guy not to overpower in that sense, but to be strong enough to stand up to
some
to
like that
them,
though,
right?
I would agree with that.
Right? Like, you don't want no wimp.
I mean, I'm somebody who, and my husband can attest to this, who is a very much so I'll do it myself kind of woman. But there is something very primal inside all of us that is like, yeah, do that for me. Cool. Please.
Right. And so he knows, he knows human nature, right? He's a very intelligent, complicated guy. I mean, they say he's not that intelligent, but I think he has social intelligence. Anyway, so then there's these 3 guys that accost them, and one of them said he saw Jaime at Whispering Wood, and I guess that's where he was captured by Robb, right? So
correct.
They're Starks. So they saw him being captured. That's how they know.
Oh, that's what. Okay. Good.
Jaime
right.
Lannister. And it was interesting to me that these guys serve the Starks because they're dickholes, and it just shows
so totally right
that in this world, even Stark men can be murderous assholes.
They walk up and I'm like, they're in northern armor. Like, you could tell they're from the north by their little skirt dresses.
The kilts.
You know?
Yeah.
Sorry, Jason, I totally stepped on you, but
no, that was my last thing. I just, I mean, I love everything with Jamie and Brienne and how it progresses, and it's fun. I forgot how contentious it was at first, and I'm just so looking forward to when it gets deep and they have this profound respect for each other. But right now, it's anything but that.
Oh no, I you know what, I would kind of disagree with that, only because I think that Jamie saw how easily she took down those three guys.
The look on his face, he was shocked. Yeah. He was shocked.
Automatic respect was in his eyes.
I agree.
While she was doing that too, she was focused on that third guy. Remember, 2 slow deaths, and then she stabbed him so fucking hardcore. But Jamie was shocked by how easily she took down those guys. He could have been grabbing for their swords, and he didn't. He stood there and was just astonished watching her. And so I'm thinking, wow, he was shook.
What was great is that she took both the sword and the dagger, and she's like, slice, and then she just drops it like a G, and she grabs her last sword, and she's like, I say my biggest one for you, motherfucker, here we go. And she's like, yeah, and you could just see she just was going in between the legs and up his body, and I just loved every second of that.
Oh, yeah, it was so brutal. The look in his
something
face,
very
too.
savage in me that loved it.
Me too, actually. There's a part of me that's like, oh, she didn't even need to kill that guy, but it's like, get rid of him.
She's a brutal murderer if you think about it. But yeah, no, that was awesome.
Yeah. And it was almost like she was resentful that she even had to bother with it, but it's got to be done.
Yeah. Oh man,
I love Brienne.
Yeah, me too.
Me too. She kissed me on the cheek one time.
Oh, shut your face! Are you serious?
I've embraced
I got
her
to host
well.
a panel with her, and it was fantastic, and she was on fire.
She's like the
and
nicest
I forgot
person.
a name at one point, and she goes, "You don't even watch the show," and I was like, "Yes, I do."
She's great.
Yeah,
was it that? Awesome. Yeah, she's awesome.
Oh my gosh,
really
I'm
good,
so
nice
jealous of you right now.
She's tall, man. She's super tall.
Yeah,
she must have been wearing high heels when I met her too, because I'm not short. I'm 6'1.5", and I was looking up at her.
I've seen the picture with you and Khal Drogo.
Yeah, he's big.
You're tall,
and he's beastly.
She needs to hook up with Tyrion.
Oh man.
Oh, I don't know how that would go. For anybody that hasn't seen it, just as a side note, I posted it on our Patreon page, I believe, but there's a video of Gwendolyn Christie and John Boyega doing What's in the Box. And it's like a fear type of
From
thing
7?
where they have to put their hands in the box and they don't know what's in the box.
That's great.
And Gwendolyn Christie is fantastic. I mean, she's wonderful. She's wonderful as she puts her hands in the box. She's wonderful as she's telling John Boyega not to put his hand in the box. Who plays Finn in Star Wars? If people don't know who John Boyega is, he plays Finn in the new Star Wars movies. But it's a really great video, and it kind of shows her personality and how wonderful she is.
Was she scared to put her hand in the box?
Oh, have you not seen it?
No, I haven't seen it.
I'm sending it to you later tonight.
Okay.
Fantastic.
Was she scared, or was she super cool about it?
Yeah, she goes, I can't handle it. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. I feel like if I was doing something like that, I would know that whatever show I'm on, they're not going to have me put my hand in a meat grinder or something. So I wouldn't even be worried about it.
She picks up a live snake, and she thinks it's intestines.
Oh, that's wild.
And then she flips the fuck out when she finds out it's a snake. So there you go.
That's funny. That's great. I got to watch that. Where were we? Oh, we're just wrapping up with Brienne and Jamie, right?
Mm-hmm.
Anything else you guys want to mention about that? I noticed that Jamie's hair was pretty dark in this scene, and it was definitely not like the stereotypical Golden Lannister, hairdo. So
you know what? I loved how quickly they were able to play off of each other. They knew that their lives were kind of at stake in this situation.
Yeah,
that was brilliant. Yeah.
What was it?
Apparently, it's a crime to eat.
Right.
It's a crime to steal.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's not a crime to starve to death. Imagine that.
It's funny because when he goes, I want you to answer at the same time, what's his name? And I thought to myself, why would she care what his name is? You know, like all she had to do was answer with, "I don't give a shit what his name is. I'm just orders are orders.
Yeah,
go fuck off."
Totally. Go fuck yourself, pansy boy.
Yeah.
She,
Thank you for bringing up Brienne and Jamie.
Yeah.
Jason. That was wonderful.
Definitely. So
we're up to you, Duncan.
Up to me. Okay, my number one. My number one was just wondering why the whites didn't attack Sam. We kind of talked about that. So let's see. We can just skip along to you, Kristen, and then I'll like come up with some notes in the meantime.
Okay. I just wanted to talk about the House of the Undying a little bit more.
Ooh, all right.
That was my number one. So I'm kind of like you, Jason. I really, really love this scene, but the first time I saw it and the first time I read it, to be honest, I just didn't appreciate it. I felt very stagnant in Karth. I felt like things weren't moving.
This is common too. A lot of people feel this way, at least for sure the first time through.
I totally get it. And it was really, really hard. So when we finally got to the House of the Undying, I felt like we were moving somewhere, which was wonderful. But now that I've seen it a couple of times and now I'm seeing it kind of in a bigger picture, it's fun to see this series of tests that she went through because now I'm asking myself questions, right?
Right.
She goes into the throne room. And it's covered in snow, which now we know it could relate to this long night and this great war.
And since you're mentioning it, if it is a vision of the future, it's either inaccurate or there's been changes from what's happening now. Because right now, Cersei has removed the 7-pointed star from over the Iron Throne, and the window behind it.
Okay, good. I'm glad that you said that because she did keep the spikes.
Right.
Around the pillars.
She she brought the spikes back.
They never left.
No, because kept the spikes, right? Because they were like flowery or whatever beforehand.
Because Joffrey made them. Yeah, Joffrey removed all the flowers and vines after Robert's death, and he added the spikes and the fire around all the pillars. Yep. So she still has that.
He has good style. You can give him that.
Shut up. So she walks in. Sorry.
No, it's hilarious.
And it's all pillars and spikes, and it's clearly Joffrey. But you could also say maybe it's what's going on now. But I didn't know that about the 7. But when you look up, everything's burned away, right?
Right.
So does that mean maybe that the dragons come in, they burn the Red Keep, right?
Yeah. Or it could be related to the wildfire.
You don't know what's going to happen with that. I mean, Daenerys doesn't want to, essentially, she doesn't want to kill the people, but she does want to kill Cersei.
It was such a beautiful scene. And if
she does by dragon fire, I'm totally fine with that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it would be poetic for sure. Oh, man, that's like that'd be crazy.
I think it would be great.
Roaster.
So yeah, she goes into the throne room and it's all burned up.
How beautiful is that? While we're there, right? Like
gorgeous.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah, and she drops the torch and approaches the throne.
But then she hears the dragons.
Right, but there's this moment where she's like about to touch the throne, just reaching out her hand.
So close.
And this throne has snow all over it. And it would be like ice and fire coming together for a second, and she hears the dragons in the distance and resists the temptation to seek the throne.
You could even go so far as to, talk about the fact that there's snow all over that, as she's trying to get to the
snow.
throne.
It's not ash, it's snow when it's up close and because people, I remember, it's been speculating maybe
that
it's
it was
ash. Like, yeah, but that's definitely snow on the arm of the throne, like on the.
But it
pommel
could have
of
a
that
double
sword.
meaning, is what I'm saying.
Oh
Jon
sure.
Snow, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Because what does she do right after she turns away? She goes through the wall.
Yeah,
right? She goes
immediately.
through the gate, and that's an interesting little juxtaposition that they put together. So she goes out into the wall through the gate that we see the Eastwatch 7 go through, and so many people go through over the course of the series. And what does she see? She sees this tent. She goes towards the tent. She sees Drogo and Rhaego. What's interesting to me And this scene is so beautiful. I mean, everybody that sees this episode, they always remember Drogo came back and Drogo and Dany got to reunite. This time when I watched it, it was interesting because as she walked away, she heard the dragons again, as she's saying, when the sun sets, what was it? Rises in the west and sets in the east. And she says the little thing that Miri Mazdur told her when Drogo would come back to her.
And if this is a dream, I will kill the man who tries to wake me until the sun rises in the west and sets in the east, until the rivers run dry and the mountains blow in the wind like leaves.
Yes. So she
Which
stands
maybe
up
that
and she
sort of reminds her that means it's not real.
Right. So when
happen.
she stands up and walks away, Drogo goes back into a set mode. I don't know if you saw it, but he never quite looked her in the eye the entire scene.
He goes still.
Westworld.
But he goes still.
Yeah, that's
like,
creepy, man.
He's
Like,
a
it was
good
just
one.
a projection just waiting to interact. Like just in standby mode.
So that was her test, right? Are you going to stay here? Are you going to leave?
Totally test. I like that line. Maybe I told the great stallion to go fuck himself and came back here to wait for you.
Yeah,
It's
I did
totally
like
like her deepest desires manifested, and exactly the way he would really talk that would charm her the most.
Yep. Yeah, it's everything she would ever imagine, like what she wanted. Yeah. All these different forms of temptation. It's wild.
that. So as she's leaving, and she doesn't look back, that's when I was struck by, if I turn back, I am lost.
If I look back, I'm lost. Yeah. Definitely
So,
great.
I just feel like...
it was like, is this a test concocted by the Warlocks, or is it her own, within her own mind, like her own test of herself?
I think that the
I think
Warlocks
it's
were
together.
using their magic, right? The Warlocks were entering her mind and trying to tempt her first with the temptation of power to lure her into their illusion to stay forever.
Yeah.
She sits the throne. She lives in their world forever under the illusion of being the queen. That didn't work, so they tried to tempt her with
that's what it is.
with love and
They're
fantasy.
trying to get her to buy into this fantasy so that she'll be complacent. Yeah.
And they're like Peter
Right.
Baelish, like, oh, this method didn't work. Let me change tactics and try this
But I mean,
manipulation.
it could be, it doesn't really matter, but it could be they don't even know what's going on. They just know how to trigger, like, okay, your deepest desires manifest.
Yeah, exactly. Whatever it is. They don't know anything about it. They're just like, okay, we'll trigger greed and power. Nope, that didn't work. We'll trigger lust and love, it's interesting.
Yeah,
cool.
You're right. There probably aren't really that many, huh? For most people, you just try a few of those. And...
Yeah.
You'll eventually get the right
Unless it's like
concoction.
Dany or Jon Snow, like it's gonna work.
So what's cool is that when she finally gets to, and she sees the dragons, the warlock, now his name is totally escaping me.
Pyat Pri.
Thank you. He says, we're strongest when the dragons are alive, and they're strongest when they're with you. And it's almost like something clicks with Dany in that moment, because she's like, this is the strongest her baby dragons are going to be, because there's all this magic that has converged on this one room.
Like if they're
right?
going to breathe fire, right now is the perfect time
those
to try.
dragons are not big enough to do what they did.
Rock,
right?
paper, scissors. I have written down dragon beats warlock.
Every time. So she says it, and she's like, Dracarys, like, I'm just gonna fucking do this
He
shit.
blows a smoke ring at first.
Right.
Drogon.
She didn't even scream it. She's like, "Oh, right, we're
Dracarys.
strong. All right,
Yeah.
you're dead."
And
so the warlocks are strong because of the dragons, and the dragons are strongest because of her, and she's strongest because it's all in the same room, that it's all converging on each other. So she's like, you know what? I'm playing my whole hand right now.
Yeah, it's like a flux
and
conversion or something.
The one thing I
wild.
don't know is how she got out of there, since there's no doors.
Once
They
the
didn't show
illusion,
that.
there probably is a door, but like they have an
Right.
illusion, so that you can only
Yeah.
see it like if they allow you to or something. The way they access your mind, the same type of thing, I imagine. So maybe when he dies, the chains evaporate, like everything turns real
To what it really
Yeah.
is, yeah.
Yeah,
The
maybe.
tower might even just be gone.
Yeah, and also
that would be interesting to see.
this whole scene in the books is like way crazy. So I highly
it's
recommend
insane.
reading this. Like, wow, it's crazy.
Read the books. Hail Hydra.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Hail Hydra.
Definitely.
Okay, so yeah, that was my number one. Is just kind of like that whole House of the Undying and just kind of breaking down what happened to her in the series of tests and what it could mean for the future, what it meant for her now. So
you will be with them through winter, summer, winter again. Across 1,000 seasons, you'll be with them.
See, I thought that meant something, and then I thought, oh wait, this is just a crazy guy.
And we will be with you until
so I crossed it out.
comes to
Literally
an end.
crossed it out.
Classic. Dragon beats Warlock.
Lizard Spock.
Oh man, I thought it was cool how the first thing that Tyrion says when he wakes up, Pod, calls him Pod. Find. This is important. There's two people that he trusts Pod to find. He says find Bronn or Varys. So that plays into, you guys thinking Varys is trustworthy as well.
Yeah.
Because Tyrion thinks Varys is trustworthy enough to be the first person he summons.
I mean, there's just like no one trustworthy, so it's not saying much,
Yeah.
But I think he's like me. He's like, well, so far everything Varys has done has seemed good, and so hopefully he'll turn out to be that way.
Yep, I think that is pretty accurate. And then Pycelle is there, and he's such a snooty, like so smug. He's such a douche. He's just loving, like sticking it to Tyrion. He like reaches down like he's gonna like pick at his bandages, and Tyrion like slaps his hands away. He's just being a total dick about everything. A little cramped perhaps, but you don't need much room, do you?
Such an asshole.
Being such a dick. You're no longer for the hand of the king. He hands him like a golden dragon for your trouble. A scumbag. And it's like
insult.
Yeah, and Tywin has essentially showed up and shit all over Tyrion's victory, shit all over Tyrion's handship, shit all over Tyrion, everything Tyrion had going, and then that's immediately personified and manifested physically when Tywin's horse drops a deuce all over the throne room.
Yeah,
symbolizing
the camera pointing right at the asshole.
Yeah, symbolizing how he just shits all over everything and Tyrion happens. Specifically. So yeah, I thought that was a great little thing.
I was sort of like, at first I was like, why is Tyrion in so much trouble? He just, was a hero. And I thought, well, maybe because he actually didn't quite succeed and it took Tywin to come in and help to really seal the deal. But then I realized, Cersei was trying to have him killed. And that guy I didn't realize that the guy that cut him was a Lannister, right? Or was
right. He was in the Kingsguard. It was Sir Mandon Moore.
And Cersei did that because she thinks in her paranoia that he's trying to kill her children. So she's just engineering it so he's persona non grata, especially now that Tywin's back and all the power can be handed over to him.
Yeah, and what a crazy scene. Finally Tywin shows up in the throne room and he's riding on the horse as everybody else is on foot, which is just so like such an assertion of power, and Joffrey is thanking him, and I, Joffrey, house of my, first of my name, etc. Thank you, Tywin Lannister, the savior of the city at the hand of the king. And he just, thank you, your grace, just like spins off on his horse and rides off. Like,
he's
and
like,
that horse,
whatever.
Yeah, that horse was gorgeous, man. Wow, did you see that beautiful horse? Even the way it walked was like really cool.
Clomp, clomp. Yeah, he's like the guy that comes in after you loosen the bottle and he opens it and gets all the credit.
Yeah, basically. And it was so funny. Tywin, Joffrey, and Cersei all looked very much related in this scene. Just the way that they were like carrying themselves, the smug like looks on all three of their faces were very similar, except Joffrey was slouching in the throne, which adds that sort of personality trait to his character. Perfect.
That kid plays that so well.
I know.
Whatever.
Jack Gleason.
Yeah, Jack Gleason.
Because I've never seen anyone have such a punchable face before. he moves his head to side, and his mouth is kind of hanging open, and his eyes are like halfway open, and he's just so good at being a dick.
Silly girls.
Yeah.
Kiss it again when I return.
I marvel at it. It's really, I mean, even as brutal as he is and as much as you hate him, I I love watching him on screen, and I welcome this chance to go back and see this era of the show. And I think he totally got what he deserved, but it's really fun to go back and see him.
And it's so, I agree. And that's one thing that I love. There's this other podcast called the Joffrey of Podcasts. Have you guys heard of it before?
No.
I've heard of it. Yeah.
Oh, it's great. Bubba and Catfish, two really great guys. We should have them on sometime. If they'll come on, it'd be awesome. They're really super in depth too. But their whole shtick is that they do the podcast as if Joffrey is like the greatest and everything is about Joffrey. So whenever they talk about awesome. Tyrion, they call him Evil Uncle Tyrion and stuff like that. They have their Joffrey of the week, and it's a really good podcast. But I don't know. When I met Jack Gleason, I wanted nothing more than to get a recording of him saying, "This is Jack Gleason, and you're listening to the Joffrey of Podcasts." But it just didn't I didn't have the time to ask him, unfortunately.
What did you have the time to do?
Just take a picture with him really quickly. Yeah. Basically, yeah.
I mean, I heard he's really nice.
Yeah, he is. He seemed really cool.
Hard to believe.
No, he was just
like that.
Just constant smile.
Sophie Turner said that she wishes that he could come back so that she could just work with him again.
Right.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's everybody raves about him. It's hilarious.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was a great scene. What were you gonna say?
Sorry. I was just going to say, does anybody have any notes? But you're in your notes. I forgot.
I have one.
Okay, cool.
Do you have more, Duncan? Sorry.
I mean, yeah, there's always more to come back to. Go ahead.
Well, I had a ton, but we've covered them all. But the only one I have left is that it occurred to me that, Robb demanded that Theon be kept alive. Tell your bastard son, Roose Bolton, to keep him alive so I can come back and execute him myself. Oh, and maybe it was that order that caused Theon to be tortured for all of season 3.
Oh, man. Yeah, maybe.
Maybe they would have just killed him right off the bat like they did I think,
everybody else got flayed, I think.
Yeah, they all get flayed, so he probably would have just been flayed right off
Dagmar, the bat. Dagmar bopped Theon on the head like a field mouse and thought he was going to get to go back to the Iron Islands. No, sir.
Idiot.
No, sir. Oh,
Idiot.
man. Yeah, pretty bad. Oh, I thought Baelish's facial expression upon hearing the word Harrenhal when he's, given Harrenhal was priceless. It gets this maniacal grin where it's just ecstasy for a split second, and his eyebrows shoot up real quick, and it's so funny. Sansa when she's being set aside is hilarious, the way that she's smiling, and it was similar to her attitude when being in the room with all the women and children during the Battle of Blackwater, how she didn't understand that the city would be if it was sacked, it would turn into a rape fest and everybody would be screwed, literally and metaphorically. And there's sort of a similar scene here. She got a good call of awakening there, but the Peter Baelish solidifies it further here by saying, "What do you think, Joffrey's just gonna give you up? You're gonna be his plaything." So that's pretty fucked up. She has another realization there that it's not over. Baelish just has so many epic lines all the time. We're all liars here, and every one of us is better than you. It's a great line.
This is Baelish's first real big score, right? It's a big score for him.
Oh, Harrenhal?
His social status, yeah, just shot
Well,
up.
I mean, being Master of Coin is a pretty big deal, too.
I guess,
yeah, being on the
that's
small
pretty huge.
Being on the small council.
Yeah.
But now he's... Yeah.
Give me control of a nation's money and I care not who makes its laws,
No, but he did get a castle. That's more than Bronn ever got.
Yeah. So far. So far, there's still hope. I was sad that Varys totally got Raz killed here, at least to set the ball in motion. I liked the point that Catelyn was making about how even if your relationship it doesn't start out with passion and whatnot, they built it and made it work and built a foundation for their relationship with her and Ned. Something that is built to last, Mm-hmm. I thought that was cool, and it just sort of made me think about the current generation and the way that social media affects people, and I think that relationships in general tend to be more superficial. So I don't know, I just think that just made me think about that, which I thought was interesting. I thought the Rob and Joffrey
I don't know.
parallel.
I stopped having new relationships a long time ago.
I mean, it's like
not really.
not like I mean, like even friendships, you know, just like all kinds of relationships, not like just romantic ones.
Romantic. Yeah.
I thought it was big that we learned that Cersei had Mandon Moore try to kill Tyrion, so that was important that we found that out. It sucks that Bronn got fired. Oh, I liked that. I liked that Varys appreciated what Tyrion did and how he saved the city. And at least somebody...
Varys is awesome.
Yeah, somebody gave Tyrion the recognition that he deserved, and he got Shae for him, too. So I thought that was really cool. And, yeah, that was good. I think that's pretty much it. Yeah, I think that wraps it up.
Cool.
We will be right back with news.
Let's go! Cause I'm feeling like I'm running and I'm feeling like I gotta get away. Better know that I don't and I won't ever stop. Cause you know I gotta win every day. Go! She really wanna pop me. Go! Just know that you will never flop me. And I know that I gotta be a little cocky. You ain't never gonna stop me. Every time I come in and I gotta set it, then I gotta go, and then I gotta get it, then I gotta blow, and then I gotta shut it. Any little thing, and then I think it be doing, cause it doesn't matter, cause I'm gonna did it.
Quiet! Hush your mouth. I told y'all mother, y'all can't stop me now. Listen to me now. I'm lasting 20 rounds. And if you want me, then come on get me now. Is you with me now? Then biggie bounce. I know you dig the way I switch my style.
For you, the listeners of Game of Microphones, Audible is offering a free audiobook download with a free 30-day trial to give you the opportunity to check out their service. For anybody that hasn't done this yet, Audible is really awesome for people like me who I'm a mom. I'm always in the car. We're always going to visit somebody or to an appointment or to school or to gymnastics or whatever. And instead of listening to whatever video my kids are listening to in the van, I like to just kind of plug in my ears and just listen to a book or a podcast like Game of Microphones. But we're going to talk about a book right now. So right now I am reading Ready Player One, and it is the most addicted I've ever been to a book in years.
Wow.
So I would highly recommend, if you get your free trial of Audible, to check out Ready Player One if you've already read the Game of Thrones books. If you haven't read the Game of Thrones books, then I would absolutely recommend starting at number 1, going all the way to number 5, and waiting like the rest of us for Winds of Winter.
Oh, but don't stop at number 5. Go to the Duncan Egg novellas and the World of Ice and Fire and all that stuff too.
There you go. There's a whole world out there for you. But if you've already read all of it and you've had your fill, I highly recommend Ready Player One by Ernest Cline. So to download your free audiobook today, go to audibletrial.com/GOM. Again, that is audibletrial.com/GOM for your free audiobook.
And we're back with the news. Take it away, Kristen.
So this first article comes from Daily Mail and in the UK, and it's titled, "It's Completely False. Game of Thrones actress Maisie Williams insists that she didn't leak the 2019 release date of final season." So Maisie Williams hit the headlines this week when she was accused of releasing the premiere date of the final series of Game of Thrones. Maisie Williams took to Twitter on Monday to assure fans that she did not let it slip that the show was slated for an April 2019 release, insisting that the quotes were completely false. The 20-year-old who plays Arya Stark in the critically acclaimed show is still in the midst of filming season 8. She told her followers, "Just a tweet letting you know this Game of Thrones release date quote I've supposedly given is completely false and taken from an interview I did years ago."
Huh.
I wonder why she gave out the release date. That wasn't cool.
I know. What the hell, Maisie?
I know. She should be fired. Just recast her. It'll be fine.
Yeah, it'll be fine.
Yeah. Our next article is from winteriscoming.net. Researchers discover a real-life Viking version of Brienne of Tarth. Over 100 years ago, Swedish archaeologist Hjalmar Stolp excavated a series of Viking graves near an ancient settlement called Birka. Because the graves were filled with items like swords and helmets, Stolp, along with generations of archaeologists, researchers, and historians since, assumed that all the occupants were male Viking warriors. They were wrong. It turns out that one of the most spectacular of the Birka graves belongs to a woman. Osteology and DNA tests have confirmed that a female was interred alongside her male counterparts, and the richness of her grave furnishings suggests she was an important military leader. The findings were recently published in the American Journal of Physical Anthropology. Said Uppsala University archaeologist Charlotte Hedenstierna Johnson. It's actually a woman, somewhere over the age of 30 and fairly tall, too, measuring around 170 centimeters. That height translates to roughly 5'6", which would have made her equal to the average man in the area at that time. Of course, Brienne of Tarth towers over most of the men in Westeros, but her Viking counterpart would have had a striking range equal to most of the men around her. The woman was also an accomplished fighter and military leader, as Hedenstierna Johnson describes. Aside from the complete warrior equipment bared along with her, a sword, an axe, a spear, armor-piercing arrows, a battle knife, shields, and 2 horses, she had a board game in her lap. Or more of a war planning game used to try out battle tactics and strategies, which indicates she was a powerful military leader. She's most likely planned, led, and taken part in battles. That's pretty cool.
It's so awesome. So I just wanted to say the reason why news is so light this week is that filming is going on right now for Game of Thrones Season 8. And while we were searching for news, there are spoilers everywhere right now for Season 8. Anyways, if you do like spoilers and you do want to see everything that's happening as far as filming goes, go to winteriscoming.net, go to watchersonthewall.com, Google, Season 8 news, and there are some massive spoilers out there. Once filming ends, I'm sure we'll have a lot more news. But for right now, news might be a little light because there's just a lot of Season 8 spoiler stuff going on right now. And, let's keep it pure, man. We only get to watch it once. That's it,
Yeah.
So
Only watch it first once.
Right. What did I say?
Watch it once.
Yeah, well,
You can watch it
it's
twice.
the same. It's the same
I watched it twice once, but only watched it once.
We only get to watch it for the first time once, all right?
There you go.
I had only watched it once until I watched it twice. Then I'd never watched it once again.
Yeah. Guys are all a bunch of assholes.
Twice.
So this week we're going to skip our little Game of Thrones as myth section, and we're just going to have a little section where we talk about our favorite stuff from Season 2, and we're just going to make it up right on the spot and say whatever comes to mind right now about what we liked about Season 2. So what do you guys think? How'd you like Season 2 as a whole?
I loved it, man. These last 2 episodes had a lot of things that stand out for me. The House of the Undying, the explosions of the wildfire, and juxtaposed with the women, hanging out, waiting to see what was going to go on, and Joffrey acting like he was going to go and defeat Stannis by himself.
Was he coronated in episode 1 of this season, or was he coronated last year?
I think it was last season, wasn't it? I don't remember.
One of his first acts as king was to behead Ned Stark.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Greeting John.
Yeah, true.
Where she's like grinding up against him. Oh, did I move?
I didn't mean to do it.
Yeah.
I heard they get sore if you don't use them.
So funny. And I remember too, because I was watching, what's that other show she was in? Downton Abbey. Oh. And she's in that too, so it's fun to see her play the different characters.
That's great. We also got the introduction of Stannis for Season 2, which is obviously huge for the rest of the series until Season 6 at least.
He's such a to me this whole season charmless person, and And then later on, he starts to feel a little more interesting for some reason. I mean, he's still interesting, but
he's had a little bit of charm when he's talking with Davos about, how Davos is a good guy and how, like, what he's. That's pretty much the only point, though, when he's like just being kind of bros with Davos.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, he just for one thing, your first introduction to him, he looks like he's being manipulated by this witch woman. So
right, yeah. First time he's burning the idols, right? The 7 statues.
What's wrong with you? And then he's like, he seems fairly humorless, but then you start to sort of admire some qualities about him as the series goes along. Or at least I did.
Oh, we forgot to mention also that we get the first time that we have 3 horn blasts this episode.
Yes.
Which has been like a big thing up until this point. Is
because nobody believed Sam.
Right.
Nobody believed him.
It's been 1,000 years since they've blown the horn 3 times, right? So it's been building and building the suspense where they've mentioned it a couple times, and finally this time, we get the 3rd horn blast, which catches everybody off guard and sends everybody running and leaving Sam abandoned.
Speaking of horns, or was it a horn that was being blown outside Winterfell?
Right, yeah, Winterfell.
Driving Theon nuts.
And whoever kills that horn blower.
Yeah, maybe that was Ramsay, probably one of his men, right?
I don't know. Maybe it was Ramsay himself. Seems like something Ramsay
torturing him already.
Yeah. I want to do it personally. He's so twisted. It's great.
Kristen, what about you?
Yeah.
What stands out?
Oh, what stands out for me is any scene that Tywin and Arya had.
Oh, those were so great.
I just thought that their chemistry was perfect. I could have watched many more episodes of the two of them just playing the dance that they were playing. You never quite knew if Tywin knew who Arya was, and you never knew what Arya was going to do next. So I really enjoyed watching them go back and forth with each other, especially when, Arya just straight up looks at him and says, anybody can be killed.
Yeah, that was amazing.
But, and also the entire sequence in King's Landing from when it was the whole Lannister clan, right? The royal family going through... I think it was Flea Bottom, and Joffrey gets the shit thrown at him, and Sansa almost gets raped, and the Hound goes and saves her, and Tyrion comes up to Joffrey and starts slapping him.
Yes. Did my hand fall from its wrist?
Yeah, I know. That whole scene, the whole thing was just wonderful.
Yeah,
it was exactly what happens in a crisis
Darth
in
Sandor.
King's Landing right now.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that and Tywin and Arya, I loved both of them very much.
Awesome.
Yeah, I like that because it's fun to see Joffrey when he's thrown off balance. He just starts freaking out.
Kill them all! Kill them all!
Like, you said to kill everybody because somebody threw poop at you, you stupid motherfucker.
I liked when Bronn had that little confrontation with Sandor Clegane.
Yeah.
When they were trying to loosen up and everything. And
right before the war?
Yeah, that was intense.
Yes. It was good, though.
That was really good. You're a talker.
I agree. How about you, Duncan?
Oh man, so much cool stuff. I like the Jaime stuff, like with him being prisoner and everything, and Grey Wind going up in his face. Thought that was really cool. There's so much good stuff in this season. I don't even know. It's all just like flashing before my eyes. Just like the whole wildfire thing. I love Tyrion with all his machinations in King's Landing.
This is a Tyrion season for sure.
Yeah. Was it this?
Clash of Kings is a Tyrion book.
And I liked
definitely
Cersei and Sansa's interactions in Blackwater too.
Oh, totally.
All that stuff was great.
Drink. And
drink. Totally.
Was it this season when Tywin was introduced as well?
Yes. Right at the
Earlier
beginning,
in this
on the
season?
field of battle.
I thought so. When he's stripping the deer.
The deer.
That's fucking hardcore. I love Tywin, man. Charles Dance is great.
Yeah. Apparently he just learned how to do that right before that. Skin a deer.
That's so funny. I don't know. Anything else sticking out to you guys?
I mean, you could almost name every moment. It's just a great,
show. The whole show
Yeah.
is like that. Yeah. Wrap that up.
I think those are some good highlights.
I mean, one thing that unnerves me a little bit is when Theon meets Yara. And right? It's like, we didn't need to see that.
It's like the breastfeeding, man. It's like the breastfeeding.
These are
so
two
I'm
of
just
my
trying to think of a
favorite
scene
moments.
I might not have liked so much.
We got the Shadow Baby too. That was fucking radical.
Right. What happened to that Shadow Baby? He just went
He just
off and
evaporates.
chilling out somewhere.
Yeah, he's chilling at the bar.
Did his duty, man.
He's like Mr. Meeseeks. Oh, that's great. Let's do some Ravens calls.
I'll go first because you just asked me to. This is from Alicia Stout.
Alicia
Stout.
Off of Instagram.
That's awesome. She says, so many great things happen in this app. Where to begin? The beginning. Pycelle creeps me out so much. Ick factor big time. If I woke up to him staring at me all weird like he did with Tyrion, I'll punch him in the face. LOL. You notice in the opening he's standing more erect and talking in a more normal voice and tone. Then in the throne room with Joffrey, he was back to his weird, oldish, creepy voice and hunched over.
Good point. He revealed himself.
What?
He totally revealed himself to Tyrion there. I didn't even pick up on that.
Right.
Great. Just to rub it in like,
Nah. He definitely has a secret side to him, and it's too bad we didn't get to know more of that before he died. I mean, what's his deal?
Yeah.
Only Tywin freaking Lannister can pull off having his horse take a dump, waltz into the throne room on horseback to accept being Hand of the King. I don't think there's ever been a more awesome entrance into a room. I mean, that's badass.
Yeah, Jaime had a close one though. When he ran up the steps of the Sept of Baelor on the horse in season 7.
Oh yeah, I'll agree with that. 6.
Season 6, yeah, that was 6, right? Because it was before the Winds of Winter. That was fucking epic. Riding up the stairs on the horse, that was cool. Lots of Lannister horse action.
And Lady Alicia, for more information on Pycelle that you might be interested in, there's a deleted scene with him and Tywin that you can find online.
Jaqen is dead. He even says it. So who is he really? Syrio? It has to be. Yes. I really want it to be.
Oh, man. That's a good clue.
Syrio
Actually, I've never heard of that line interpreted that way. Like he's telling you that the guy who was that face is dead, you know? So, yeah, that's great.
I mean, why do we think it might be? Because Syrio's from there?
Yeah, because he's Braavosi and because he may have ended up in the Black Cells if he wasn't killed by Meryn Trant.
Yeah, but he didn't.
What do we say to the God of Death?
Not today.
Yeah,
exactly.
That's just from his hometown. They say that everywhere he goes.
Good morning, Francis. Not today, Gerald.
Love the illusion scenes with Dany and Drogo. It was so sweet and beautifully done that it made me cry. Anyone else think that baby was not only beautiful but so cute? I did.
Yeah.
Have a great podcast. Love you guys.
Love you too.
Thanks, Lady Alicia.
Yeah, thanks. Our next message is from Matthew Rep. This is from Facebook. Tywin certainly knows how to make an entrance. It is so abundantly clear he has zero respect for his grandson Joffrey. He doesn't even bow or get off his horse in his presence. He appreciates Joffrey for the prestige he brings to the Lannister family, but that's about it. You can really see the moment Jaime gains respect for Brienne when she takes out those 3 Northmen. It's the beginning of a beautiful friendship. Thank the gods Dany is leaving Qarth. Season 2 was just stagnant for her. I like how even before earning the title Breaker of Chains, the first chains she breaks are her own. Now on to greater things. Yeah.
Totally.
Is that why
Matthew.
Wait a minute. Why did she earn that title?
Because she frees slaves.
And because she broke her chains the Warlock had her in this episode.
But I think the breaker of chains is about the slaves. But the point, that Matthew's making is she actually broke her own chains first. And that's probably a symbolic thing, right? Yeah, like you're kind of
exactly. That's cool, man.
Talking about that, Kristen, that literally breaking those, well, maybe not literally because they're kind of illusions, but anyway, she's kind of freeing herself there.
She broke the illusion of the chain.
I think it's awesome.
Yeah, I agree. That's really cool. And I think that this is the moment when Jaime gains his first inkling of respect for Brienne. Before this, he had zero respect, and I think that he was really impressed with her after this. This is the first time I really noticed it too. I noticed the look on his face is just like utter bewilderment when she kills those guys.
It'll be fun. Yeah, it'll be fun to see if he stops being quite as much of a dick after this.
Yeah, and this whole passage is really good in the books too, like the interaction with Jaime and Brienne on their journey together, here and then again on the way to King's Landing after they're captured at Harrenhal, I believe. Is that where it is? Harrenhal? Yeah, because Roose Bolton is there. Yeah, so definitely read the books because there's a lot of really cool stuff that's left out that you'll really
Bear
enjoy.
and the Maiden.
Yep. The Maiden.
Gwendolyn Figueroa says, "Hey guys, another great episode to chat about. Tyrion looked too scared to see Pycelle after waking up.
Yeah.
He knew he was not in safe hands. Then Shay comes in the room, another set of unsafe hands. Ooh. I feel so bad for what's coming. Dany's experience in the House of the Undying reminded me of the movie Labyrinth, a must-see. When the Goblin King recreated her bedroom to help her forget her ultimate goal of rescuing her brother and keeping her with him. I felt we're trying to do the same to Dany by reuniting her with her loves. Glad it didn't work. Thanks again. Have a great one."
That's a good connection. I've never seen Labyrinth, but that sounds like...
what?
Yeah.
Jennifer Connelly and David Bowie.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've been meaning to watch
movie.
it for a while. Just never got around to it.
It is similar because it's all like
trippy and weird.
Thing,
yeah. Cool.
Like little snails at the beginning to get in there.
I love labyrinths. I've built a number of hardcore labyrinths in video games and stuff. Like in Halo, I built a pretty awesome one. And
That's awesome.
I built a pyramid in Minecraft to impress my friend's son who was like trying to show me Minecraft, and I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. I'll build something crazy. And then I built like a monstrous labyrinth because I just like couldn't stop for like a week or two.
I'd like to see some of that sometime.
Yeah, I'll show you anytime.
Mandy Castillo says, so far every time I've watched this episode, I seem to have tunnel vision and only absorb Dany's reunion with Drogo and the baby Khal. I mean, other things happen in this episode, right? I think there was some other stuff. It's hard to remember. Something with the changing faces and Joffrey dumping Sansa for Marjorie, and something about Robin, Talissa marrying in secret sounds familiar. I kind of remember some whites and some White Walkers riding on decayed horses, scaring the shit out of Sam. But seriously, I'm pretty sure I teared up seeing Dany and Drogo reunite on my first watch. This time I knew it was coming and still wasn't emotionally prepared. Well played, Game of Thrones. Lord of Light, help me if Dany and Jon get married, because I'll be a pile of mush.
Oh, man.
Mush.
You're going to be mush for sure, but I don't know if it's because they're going to be married. Something horrible's going to happen.
Either way, you'll be crying something.
Yeah, you'll be crying for some reason, for sure. Dave Hallberg. What's up, Dave?
Oh.
Dave says, hello, all. I thought I would mention something that I noticed that others may not. And this is because Dave is military. He says, if Jaqen is a recruiter for the Faceless Men, here he is the real deal, lying just like all the recruiters do. He tells Arya, you have many names on your lips. You can offer them to the Red God. This is a classic bait and switch. When Arya shows up at the House of Black and White, ready to learn the killing ways and get her to her revenging, she's told she has to be no one and forget who she was. All recruiters lie, either outright or by omission. Very interesting. I hadn't heard this perspective on Jaqen here talking with Arya. I think it's totally, makes perfect sense.
Yeah, that I mean, I always felt like that when that whole season 5 with the House of Black and White. I was like, well, isn't this sort of not the point of why she wanted to do all this, or telling her to forget it all?
Yeah, it's crazy, man. Yeah.
Okay, so we have some emails now, and the first email is about last week. and it's from Lady Emily. Hello, I'm Emily, a big fan of your podcast. I started listening a few months ago, and I finally caught up on your Rewatch podcast. Here are my thoughts on Blackwater. Oh, Helene. Thank you. Helene, the pyromancer's reaction to the wildfire explosion is my favorite part of this episode. Everyone else is flinching away from the heat and brightness, and Helene is like, yes!
Yes!
R.I.P. Roy Dotrice. Tap, tap. I wish you could have read The Winds of Winter and A Dream of Spring to us.
Yes.
Stannis is such a badass. As we hear from Lancel, the king's presence is good for morale, and Stannis' men are pumped coming out of those boats with their kings leading the charge. The Lannisters see their king retreat, and there's a huge drop in morale. Do you guys think Stannis would have taken over King's Landing had it not been for the Tyrell and Lannister armies?
Oh,
yes.
Yeah. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Definitely. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I think that Tyrion
had cavalry.
Yeah, Tyrion had taken out the ram, and it looked like everything was cool. And then all of a sudden, Stannis' forces, the cavalry, had arrived, and they came out of the darkness.
And Joffrey ran away, and everyone's morale sank.
Yeah. So yeah, without Tywin having shown up, I think that everybody would have been raped in King's Landing.
Good.
Hide your children, hide your wives.
Sounds great. Sounds like a great night.
Yeah.
Cersei scares Sansa again by telling her Sir Ilyn is really there to kill them all if Stannis takes the city. Then Sir Ilyn doesn't stop Sansa or Cersei from leaving. I'm glad neither Joffrey nor Tyrion had the Hound executed right then and there when he was like, fuck the king. But why didn't they? Were they really that speechless? Don't you want to get rid of dissenters, especially ones that have access to the Red Keep, and head there to take Sansa Stark away?
My question is, what army would have taken out the Hound at that point? I mean,
probably nobody.
The army's occupied. They would need that entire army just to subdue him.
Or you just need a torch.
Yeah. But they don't know that. They don't know that.
That's so sad.
They don't know.
Either the Hound had decided before that day that he'd take Sansa with him if he ever left, or the Hound thought of Sansa when he decided he was leaving. Either way, it's so sweet. If and when they meet again, I bet we'll hear the Hound call Sansa Little Bird, and she'll say she regrets not leaving King's Landing with him that night. Oh gosh, please have that be a scene. Thanks for everything you do to keep us sane while the long night continues. Sir Dunk and Lady Kristen, you're amazing. Keep up the great work. Oh,
thank you so much.
You guys are amazing too. I love it.
Yeah, I really think that would be a good scene too. If Sansa ever does see the Hound again, I think that she will tell him, I should have left with you. Stupid.
Yeah.
Like she said to Jon Snow. And she was like, I was awful to you. Just admit it.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Yeah, I think she's been thinking about that type of stuff. So I'm sure that she'd say, listen, I should have left with you. I fucked up. It ended badly for a while at least.
There needs to, I'm sure they've got all these, we've got to have these reckonings. They're marking them all in their Post-it notes and putting them up on the board. Well, they've done this because they're filming it, right? Are they done filming?
No.
They're in the middle of it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, this one is from, it's my turn, right?
Yes, sir.
From Lady Carlin Werderman of House Hufflepuff.
I love it.
Whoop, whoop.
Oh, yeah, I got it right. Hi, Duncan and Kristen. Hi. I found your podcast on Spotify at the beginning of December, and I have to admit that I listened to almost every episode of your podcast since then. I love your passion and excitement for this show, and I'm glad you guys are sharing it with others around the world.
Yay, thanks.
Yeah. That being said, I finally have the courage to share my thoughts on this show, specifically with the scene in the Blackwater episode where Sansa is holding her doll and talking to Sander. I do echo Duncan's thoughts about how Sansa's dropping of the doll symbolizes the end of her innocence, her transition into adulthood, and her acknowledging the dangerous reality around her. But I also think it goes deeper than that. I don't know if you guys noticed, but that is the same doll that Ned gave her in Season 1, Episode 3, entitled Lord Snow. When Ned gave her the doll, she angrily told him that she hasn't played with dolls since she was 8 years old. in the early episodes of season 1, we see Sansa wanting so badly to grow up, to be seen as an adult, and to be the queen, Joffrey's wife and the mother of his children. Now, at the end of season 2, she realizes that she does not want those things anymore. I do agree that the doll scene symbolizes the end of her innocence, but I also think it symbolizes her desire to return back to that time, the time where she was naive, ignorant of the harsh realities around her, as well as the time when her father was still alive, and unfortunately accepting she can no longer have those things. Yeah, it was like a touch point, at least back to that, like just a connection to that time before she knew any of this and had any of these troubles.
Yeah, definitely.
I think last week we got about 5 or 6 different messages saying almost exactly the same thing about the dolls. So I think Duncan and I kind of had a blind spot on the doll last week.
And also, we had asked about it specifically, so I'm glad that people responded too.
Yeah, that was good.
I had posed a question. So yeah, that's cool.
So we got some good responses, and they were all pretty much the same. And I really appreciate the responses. So thank you very much, because once that was brought to light, it was like, oh yeah, duh.
Light bulb.
Thank you.
Yeah. Totally had forgotten about that scene with Ned.
Yeah, I think you're both right, though. I think you're both right.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah. It's a loss of innocence and a desire to return back to that time.
Yeah, and that's how like talented the show writers are, like multi-layered metaphors and stuff like that. It's so cool.
Lady Carlin goes on, anyway, I'm eager to hear your feedback and additional insights in future episodes. Sincerely, Lady Carlin Werderman of House Hufflepuff, drinker of coffee and lover of hockey.
Hey!
Love it.
That's awesome. Love hockey too. And coffee. What do you know?
I love coffee.
You mean you like money too? That's awesome. Thanks for writing, Lady Carlin. So nice to hear from you.
The next, and I think last email is from Archmaester Rennie. Dark Lord and Bright Lady. I love it.
Duality.
This is the episode of Tyrion's undeserved downfall. If it wasn't shocking enough that Ned Stark got killed in season 1, this turn of events just reinforces Game of Thrones' relentless refusal to punish the wicked and reward the brave and virtuous, which is, of course, what sets it apart and makes it such a phenomenon. But I do hate to see Tyrion suffer.
Yeah.
We're all liars here, and every one of us is better than you. I think that's my favorite of all of Littlefinger's lines. Now that we know his final fate, it's somewhat less painful to watch him manipulating and using Sansa, since we know that she's going to get the last word. Hell yeah.
Yeah, she does.
I love every interaction between Brienne and Jaime. Actually, I just love everything Brienne says and does. Yeah, me too, Rennie.
Yeah, definitely.
Interesting that this episode and this season climaxes with both Dany and Jon making a kill. Dany instructs her dragons to burn Pyat Pree, and Corn Halfhand maneuvers Jon into killing him. A death by fire, a death into the ice. Ooh, I love it. Yours loyally, cool. Archmaester Rennie.
Wow, Rennie, that was a great
Rennie's
pull.
Awesome. You know, we didn't mention, like, when Jaime's saying to Brienne, you know, I bet none of those guys, you wish one of those guys was strong enough to overpower you. She does meet the guy.
She does. You mean,
yeah.
Wait. There's a couple. Which one do you mean?
What the hell is his name? I
Tormund?
can't think of it. Yes. I mean, I think, you know.
He hasn't overpowered her yet, but he definitely wants to.
He's big and strong.
And that's like his mode.
He sets her off balance, that's for sure.
Yeah. And the Hound almost overpowered her.
Right,
he's slightly
not
weakened.
Quite.
Yeah.
No, I think Tormund. I'm rooting for those too.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Me too.
How about that reunion of Brienne and the Hound though in season 7 when they're on the way to meet Cersei at the Dragon Pit? Remember that? That was so cool. So they just
cool.
kind of like
see. That's why I think they really have an eye on these reunions. They want to satisfy all of our desires.
Yeah, they totally like forgave each other and like.
Let's get Jon and Arya going. Like now.
Yeah, right. Yep. I'm interested to see
happen.
Jaime and Bran. That's going to be cool.
I don't think Bran's going to care.
Right?
That would be interesting.
It's gonna be
I think
real
Bran's
cool.
dead.
Think Bran's dead?
Yeah, we can talk about it later though.
Whoa.
Like his soul.
Yeah, I think Bran's. I think he's just the three-eyed raven now.
Oh, okay. So you think he's the computer man, the three-eyed computer raven man?
Yeah.
But then he may say, he may project like you're insignificant to me, which could be interesting.
It'll be interesting, that's for sure. I agree.
Your actions were necessary in the greater picture. Thank you, Jamie, for pushing me from that window.
Thank you, Jamie.
Yeah. Sir Jamie of House Lannister. That's epic.
Hey guys, Sir Patrick of the late entry. Sorry about that. I already missed the recording, I'm sure. But maybe you can tack this on at the end. I don't know. Anyway, just a thought. Shay, you can see in this episode that Shay really does love Tyrion. She's all about, like, let's get out of here. I don't care about the money. And, yeah, okay, first of all, here's a question. I really want to know. Is there any doubt that she's a faceless man? And if she's not a faceless man, what is she? Okay? Because, what was her previous life before being a sex worker? Anyhow, who brought her into that room where she reveals that she doesn't care about the money, really loves him, just wants to leave? Who brought her into that room? It was Varys, okay? So, and, who's gonna offer her diamonds to leave next season and not try to clearly distinguish that it wasn't Tyrion's idea that happened? And is this person a secret Blackfire conspiracist? I'm just wondering. Also, does this person have nasty silver pubes that resemble wicked spider webs? Just saying. Alright. Love it. Bye.
As always, thanks for calling in, Sir Patrick. Good to hear from you, my friend.
Hello, it is Sir Anonymous of the Dish Sink. Actually, my name is Brendan, and I'm 15 from Michigan. I just want to say, hearing all that yesterday, or last week, it was really weird, and I'm excited to call in again. So I have two things. One, I've gotten my little brother to listen to some of your guys' stuff, and today is actually his birthday. He's turning 13, and I think you might like hearing a happy birthday from you guys on a podcast. So if that's possible, that would be great. And my second question actually is, if you guys had a specific weapon that you would use if you were actually in this time frame of Game of Thrones. I think the Walking Dead cast had the same kind of question that they talked about, but what would yours be that would kind of reflect about your personality and how, like, that type of stuff? All right, keep up the good work. Bye.
Hey, Sir Brendan, thanks for calling in and telling us who you are. Glad you and your brother have been enjoying our podcast, and a very happy birthday to Sir Anonymous, the younger. I think that if I had to choose one weapon for the Game of Thrones universe, it would be some type of sword. I don't know, I guess a katana wouldn't be around in that universe. I guess it would be a two-handed long sword. Good reach, good balance, good maneuverability with two hands, good weapons moves, like weapons list, move list and stuff like that. So yeah, I think I would use some variety of two-handed longsword. If not that, a short sword and a shield, because you can't go wrong with that combo. But I would attack from the shadows, and it would be like a one-strike kill type thing. So two hands, precision, deadly action. I would pick a two-handed longsword, most likely. Thanks again for calling in, Sir Brendan. And happy birthday, Sir Anonymous the Younger. So that pretty much wraps up our show, everybody. Number 62. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, everybody. I have loved having Jason on, by the way. Thank you so much for...
Well, thank you guys for asking me to come back on, but most of all, thanks for taking over the show and making it more kick-ass than it's ever been before. I couldn't be happier with how it's been going and the response that you guys have been getting. You guys are superstars. So
thanks, man. It's an honor to have the privilege to be here.
That's so nice.
Yeah,
I mean it. I absolutely mean it. And can I plug one of my other shows?
Yeah.
Yes.
I
Okay.
have you written down to mention all the podcasts.
Okay. I just want to mention that I just started a new podcast, Westworld Cast, covering Westworld. So if you guys are into that, it's with me and David, who is Karen's husband. Some of you don't know who any of those people are, but I think
David's
a lot
the
of you
man.
might.
He's a cool guy.
Yeah, and David's been on a few times on Walking Dead Cast, and we talked about Westworld, and he's passionate about it. So we've recorded 2 episodes. I've only published 1 so far, but we're having fun going back and just delving deep into that. We're doing season 1 from the perspective, just like Kristen and Nook are, of someone who's seen the whole thing, so we can really talk about it in depth and not worry about spoilers.
Nice.
And that show is perfect for that, because you learn a lot by the end of it. So check it out if you want to get there on your phone or computer. Just go to westworldcast.com and it'll take you to it.
Ooh, I gotta watch that show, man. Looks really cool.
Yeah, I think
I only
you're gonna
got
love it.
halfway through.
Yeah, it's I think it really starts to. It's kind of like Game of Thrones. I mean, for a lot of people, you
World
gotta
building
push
for a
through,
while.
but it's very rewarding. Yeah, once you.
Oh,
do.
I love it. I think it's great. I just we only had HBO in one room of our house when it was on, and it was the coldest room of the house, and it was in the middle of winter, and I'm like, I can't sit in this room anymore. So we just stopped watching it.
If you guys haven't watched it, it's Anthony Hopkins, and it's this.
Oh, really?
Old
I didn't
West-
know he was in it.
Yeah, and
Dude.
Aiden Quinn.
I'm all
No,
aboard the Anthony
Ed
Hopkins
Quinn.
train.
Nope.
What?
Ed.
Ed Harris.
Dolores.
Thank you, Ed
Ed Harris,
Harris. Oh my
Platoon. That
gosh.
guy's awesome
Yes,
too. I love
he's
that
awesome.
actor.
It's like, one of those ones where it's this fantasy theme park of Old West with all these androids that are identical to human, and sometimes you don't know what's what, and they don't know what's what.
Kind of
and
like
it's
Cylons.
a mystery. Yeah, it's like a lot like Battlestar Galactica in that way, and it's a mystery wrapped in a riddle inside an enigma kind of a thing.
Sick.
It's really, really, really good.
You had me at Hopkins.
No, I think it's fantastic, and I want to see the rest of the show. It was just too cold.
I remember playing Max Payne. Remember that video game, Max Payne? I'd play it.
I didn't play it.
I played it in the basement of my parents' house back in like middle school, and in the freezing cold in the middle of winter, and that's part of the game is like you're going through New York City in the freezing cold, and so it just felt right, and so that was cool. But next week we'll be covering season 3, episode 1. This week we had Valar Morghulis. Next week we have Valar Dohaeris, which always follows Valar
9 months
Morghulis.
later.
Yeah, so I thought that was pretty cool. But yeah, give it a watch, you guys, and come back to us with your thoughts. We'd love to read them on air.
Yeah, as always, we love your feedback. We love to interact with you through the week. So check us out on Facebook, where you can usually find one of us lurking around to talk to you about whatever you want to talk about.
Yeah. If you'd like to call, you can always reach us at 813-563-3739. That's 813-JOFFREY.
If you'd like to write in, you can email us at game@podcastica.com.
Check out the Facebook page at facebook.com/GOM podcast.
Imslap! We're also on Twitter and Instagram at GOM Podcast, and as you know, we do read out feedback if you put it on either of those 2 places as well.
Yes, ma'am. Please, if you haven't already, give us a like on Facebook and an iTunes rating. If you've made it this far in the podcast, you're obviously willing to dedicate a couple hours to us, so take a couple seconds and just give us a little rating real quick. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, and if you want, you can check out podcastica.com. That's where all our other shows are, including the Westworld one, Walking Dead Cast, Strange Indeed, Once Upon a Time, etc., etc.
I did have you down to talk about the podcast. I knew it. Thanks, everybody. That's our show.
Thanks for listening, everybody.
Valar Morghulis.
Valar Dohaeris.
Did I say it right?
Yes, you
okay.
did. I say Valar hairspray.
I've heard people say Valar Dohaeris as well.
They're wrong.
Yeah.
That's from Trailer Park Boys. Bam! Peanut butter and jam!
Creepy looking guy.
Baelish has an invisible mustache that's like, always twirling.
He told her, "You're just a whore," and made her go away.
See, I thought that meant something, and then I thought, oh, wait, this is just a crazy guy.
A king should keep his word.
Yeah, with the camera pointing right at the horse's asshole.
Yeah, symbolizing how he just shits all over everything, and Tyrion specifically.
We only get to watch it once. That's it.
Oh, okay. So you think he's the computer man, the three-eyed computer raven man?
Yeah.
Just to fuck with us? Dragon beats warlock.
Oh.
That's epic. Okay. And we will be with you until time comes to an end.